The City of Swan disclaims any liability for any loss arising from any person or body relying on any statement, discussion, recommendation or decision made during this meeting. Where an application for an approval, a licence or the like is considered or determined during this meeting, the City warns that neither the applicant nor any other person or body should rely upon that discussion or determination until written notice of either an approval and the conditions which relate to it or the refusal of the application has been issued by the City. Please note that this meeting is being live streamed. The recording will also be archived and made available on the City's website after the meeting. If you choose to participate in the meeting during public question time or public statement time, it is assumed that your consent is given for the audio to be recorded. Please keep your comments respectful to the Council and to other members of the community. Visual images of the public will not be captured. Conditions of entry. No electronic, visual or audio recording or transmitting device or instrument is permitted to be used. A person who breaches this provision of the City of Swan Meeting Procedures Local Law 2019 will be required to immediately leave the premises. Attendance apologies. I have Councillor Jones on leave. Madam CEO, is there any other apologies?
No, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Declarations of financial and proximity interest and interest affecting impartiality.
Mr Mayor, we have Councillor Henderson, a proximity interest in item 3.7, which is the mushroom farm, as it is adjacent to his property. Councillor Parry, impartiality interest for item 13.6, the proposed classroom addition to the place of worship, as the manager of the church is an acquaintance he's previously worked with. Councillor Zanino, an impartiality interest in item 1.7, Midland Oval Design Guidelines, as a business partner owns land on the Crescent. Councillor Congerton, impartiality interest item 3.6, the proposed reception centre, as the planning consultant had previously provided him services, and item 3.8, proposed shopping centre, as the Vespoli Group has acted for the not-for-profit group that the councillor is the president of.
Okay. Any other declarations from either staff or councillors? There being none, that brings us to public question time. Questions and answers recorded in the minutes of the meeting may be summarised in accordance with the Local Government Administration Regulations of 1996. 5.1 is answers to questions which were taken on notice. There's a question from Ms Janet Benham on behalf of the Upper Swan District Ratepayers and Residents Association. That answer is in the folder. 5.2 is questions relating to reports in the agenda. Questions which due notice has been given, I have nil. And questions without due notice, I have one question from Mr Mark Richards, President of the Bellevue Ratepayers and Residents Association. Mr Richards, if you could come to the microphone and ask your question.
Make sure I had plenty of copies this week for everyone. An article out of the report of March 22nd, 1994. My question is regarding the proposed extension of time to the term of approval for lunch bar at Lot 400 107 Clayton Street, Bellevue, and the warehouse at Lot 510 109 Clayton Street, Bellevue, DA 395 15B, DA 396 15B. My question, the original development application on the 4th of November 2015 did refer to the Bellevue East land use study, but said to assess current zoning. The odd thing here is the lunch bar for the lunch bar is actually a development of a commercial building, and it's been approved on residential land. DA 39515 approved under delegated authority on 20th of October 2015 lunch bar. How can this be approved under delegated authority when this section of land is zoned residential? Why didn't this DA go before council as the other DA did? And I will just stretch on this. The applicants are the same entity who owns the Omex site.
Mr Richards, if I can interrupt, do you want us to answer those questions as we go?
Go on then.
Okay,
yep, that'd be great.
Okay. Mr Russell, do you want to answer? Do you remember the first question?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. The answer to the first question around why the lunch bar on residential zone land was determined under delegated authority was because whilst it's residential zone land, it has an additional use, that site had, to provide for exactly a lunch bar. Okay, so in the event that there was no opposition to all of that, and the Ballas study made recommendations with respect to land zoned residential, land zoned general industrial to go to residential, this land was already residential, so it was dealt with on that basis. In relation to the application for the warehouse, it was the reverse. The warehouse is on land currently zoned industrial, and as it was at the time, and it was presented to council because clearly it was the establishment or furtherance of an industrial use contrary to what the intent of Ballas was, to actually have land such as that, industrial land, rezoned. So it was put to council cognizant of you had a proposal, an application that actually, and the report noted this, did not accord with Ballas, but was in the situation that it did, however, accord with the actual zoning of the land. So in those sorts of situations where you have contrasting instruments, and one certainly takes preference over the other, it was put to council so that council could see that and adjudicate on that position, which it duly did at the meeting in November, where it approved the warehouse.
Thank you, Mr Russell. Mr Richards, your third question.
Okay. Can officers advise progress of the amendments to the zonings on Clayton Street under Ballas' recommendation?
Mr Russell.
Well, there's no draft amendments at this stage. If that's something that council wishes to prioritise or make a specific direction on, it's free to do so.
Thank you, Mr Russell. Fourth question.
Last question. The applicants are the same entity who owned the Omex site, the same family that owned Western Oil Refinery. The land was the worst contaminated sites in Australia and triggered Ballas. Are there any guarantees that we'll call them Henderson Proprietary Limited, we know who the directors are, will abide by the current regulations and laws, as their recent record thus far is very questionable? And you'll see the Midland Reporter there. And I will say one more thing. It's a real slap in the face that oil first started this contaminated site in Omex, the contaminated site of Omex, and then we got a warehouse storing oil.
Okay, Mr Richards, I'll allow Mr Russell to answer the question. Mr Russell, the question, if you recall it.
Well, Mr Mayor, it's not a question. I view that as a statement that Mr Richards is free to make. I'm not in a position to comment on it.
I think it was in regards to what guarantee.
To what, sorry?
If you'd just like to repeat that question, Mr Richards.
Well, I'm just saying that what's been done in the past by Omex Western Oil has been very questionable. There's a plain disregard to any regulation, any laws. And what guarantees do we have that Henderson Proprietary Limited are going to follow those regulations? I've already noticed that there will be a wash bay as part of the application. I'm sure you'll be very interested to see what's being washed down that wash bay as well. I could imagine, but I don't know.
Mr Russell, if you possibly got an answer for that?
Well, I don't think we need to worry about the lunch bar doing anything offensive or anything that requires a high level of regulation, Mr Mayor. In relation to the warehouse, it's not a general industrial use. A warehouse is commonly just simply a storage facility. Now, I don't know whether you might say, well, are they storing chemicals or other materials that might require approvals? If they are, then they'll be regulated by the agencies that do that.
Thank you, Mr Russell.
Require a licence or a permit.
Thank you. And if you have no further questions, Mr Richards, thank you
very much for your time.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Mayor, I have a point of order, I think. Dave Knight from Midland. I submitted all these questions. None of them are attributed to me. They are attributed to Janet Bename.
I'm sorry,
Unless
Mr.
I've got a dodgy
I've got
agenda.
them here, a whole heap of questions with your name on it coming up right now.
I must have a dodgy then.
Okay. That brings us to other questions, and there are 13 questions from Mr Knight, and those answers are in the green folder. That takes us now to questions without notice, and Mr Baku, you have a couple of questions, I believe. And we'll ask Mr Baku to remind you do have the opportunity to ask 5 questions if you could keep it brief, because we do have a lot to get through this evening.
Yep, thanks, Mr Mayor. Question that relates to a question I asked at the January meeting. when I asked about the issue of building heights for the proposed Paradise Keys aged care development. The answer given in part said, the EOI released by Colliers on behalf of the City of Swan in 2016, did not state building heights. This is due to the city not being an aged care developer provider. It was to be market driven and presented to council for decision. Now, I see that as strange reasoning. The city is not a developer or a provider for most of the types of development that happen within its boundaries, but it still accepts its responsibility to regulate allowable building heights to ensure orderly and unappropriate developments. Aged care developments are not town planners.
Mr. Boo, can I ask you to please ask your questions? I did ask you to keep it brief.
Oh, sorry.
So if you just ask your questions...
Aged care and development.
Thank you.
So my question is, why was the issue of building heights not recognised as a planning issue for which the city should have at least have prescribed maximum allowable building heights rather than leaving it to the market to drive, given that clearly the market doesn't have town planning expertise?
Okay. Mr Tan,
and
could
its
you
primary
answer that question, please?
Can I finish the question, please, Mr
Well, you've asked the question already, so I was asking Mr Tan
And
to
its
answer.
primary objective would be to maximise commercial returns to the developer.
Mr Tan, if you have an answer for that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there's no height restriction under our scheme. Besides, when the land was sold to us, right, there was no height restriction placed by the department. Moreover, when the matter went before council, like we previously answered, that we're not a aged care provider, we left it to the market in the expression interest to lodge submission for council to consider it. Similarly to any structure plan, there's no height restriction. We look at the plan when lodged and consider it on its merit.
Okay, your second question, please, Mr Baku.
Okay, following on from that, at its meeting of 8th of April 2015, Council resolved to reclassify portions of Lot 12153 Paradise Keys from Recreation Reserve to Special Use Zone to provide for the development of a retirement village. Now, there'd been objections to the rezoning because of concerns about scale and building heights of subsequent development. As later events have shown, there would have been many more objections had the community not been earlier led by the city via its advertised concept plan into expecting the development would be mostly single storey. Anyway, Council accepted the staff recommendation to overrule those objections for the following reasons, and I quote from the report. The city has developed a conceptual plan for the indicative development of the site, and this was advertised to the public to assist in its consideration of the proposed amendment. It is envisaged that this conceptual plan, as well as any tender brief inviting expressions of interest for the land, will set out Council's expectations in terms of extent of built form, plot ratio, number of units and building height, as well as interface treatments with adjoining land. And it went on to say...
Mr Baku, can you please
Council's...
get to your question? I've asked you to be brief. If you could get the question...
Well, all right, so that's on the record.
Okay, we've got that. We know the minutes.
You've got my point that there was
have the question, please.
Yes, my question is actually fourfold, and that'll take it up to 5. If that was the process envisaged in April of 2015, in other words, that the council could and would state its expectations about building heights when calling for expressions of interest and enforce them via the contract, why are we now being told that the EII released by Colliers on behalf of the City of Swan in 2016, a few months later, did not address allowable building heights with the reason given that the council's not an expert and they did let the market? In other words, why was it the right thing to do in 2015 but not right a few months later in 2016?
Mr Tan or Mr Russell, have you got an answer of some kind?
Mr. Mayor, those comments made in the scheme amendment report refers to addressing the submission received. As all scheme amendment, when adopting for final approval, all the submissions and staff comment were sent to the Department of Planning, and they make the final decision. If the minister deemed that there should be height restriction, the minister would have instructed the city to modify our scheme amendment that as a condition. That wasn't the case.
Further question?
I think you may have missed my point, though, Mr Tan, which was that the council...
Again, we're not
the
debating
approval,
Mr Bakuk, so can I
No, this
please
is a-
have your next question?
OK, I think he's missed my point. The
Well,
council
we're
said
not-
it
like I
would
said,
do
we're
one
not
thing and
debating.
didn't.
Take your question,
Was
please.
the decision not to state the city's requirements in the EOI documentation, despite the objections to the rezoning that I've referred to having been dismissed by council on the basis that the requirements would be stated, made by council or by city staff?
Decisions made by council based on staff recommendation.
Okay, next question.
If it was by council, then when was that decision made, and was it made public?
Mr Tan, I guess it would have been at a council meeting, so it would have been public.
This is the decision not to include height requirements in the EOI documentation.
Do you want to ask your last question while Mr Tan gets your answer?
I can wait.
Mr Tan?
Mr. Mayor, all those questions that Mr. Bakul asked has been answered. To his question 1, documented in the minutes on the 22nd of January. It's a chronology of events and council decision made accordingly.
Thank you, and I think that was forwarded to Mr Bakul today. Your
Certainly
last question.
was, but it didn't answer the question.
So
I just
your last
asked a question
question,
that in no way was an answer to my question.
Can I have your last question, please?
That was in no way an answer to my question. Given that the city's expectations ultimately were not set out in the EIN documentation, how does the city answer the accusation that the premise on which the objections to the rezoning were overruled, and based on which the city recommended to the Minister for Planning that the rezoning should be approved, was actually a false pretence?
I'm not sure, Mr Tan, there's an answer to that question, or Mr Russell?
I'll answer that, thank you, Mr Mayor, because it goes to the heart of the staff report on the scheme amendment. Okay, the scheme amendment, there's a couple of things I think we need to correct Mr Bakul on. It's not a case of overruling objections, because there is no power, the point in which the staff and the council considers a scheme amendment, to say yea or no in finality. As Mr Tan has pointed out, that decision lies with the Minister. So we provide a response on the submissions. So if you've got responses, if you've got submissions contesting a concern with building height, you might say, well, look, building height is something that can be dealt with subsequently. It can be dealt with through any number of instruments, whether it's an expression of interest in a commercial document, whether it's the promulgation of a policy, whether it's the set-up of design guidelines, or any number of things. It was merely noted that the concern around the future matter of height, it's fair, it's heard, it can be dealt with in any number of ways, inclusive of whether or not it's in an EOI. So it's wrong to say, and it's completely wrong, to suggest that the report misrepresented or was written in a false pretence, because it wasn't. And it was not a case that we were overruling the objections. We were noting those and saying how you deal with subsequently in a built form development, the issue of building height can be dealt with in numerous forms. And mostly, when it comes to these types of things, it's very rare that you see too many amendments that are overly prescriptive in terms of things such as building height or other bits and pieces, because they're generally drilled down to and dealt with at subsequent more detailed instruments. So, in conclusion, it is false to suggest that the report was a misrepresentation, whether inadvertently, which it wasn't, or deliberately, which it most certainly wasn't either.
Thank you, Mr Russell, and thank
I
you for your
perhaps
questions,
expressed
Mr.
the
Bakul.
word overruled the objections, but the report advised council
Thank you,
that
Mr.
it could
Bakul.
not,
We have
it
answered your
need not
questions.
worry about that.
If you have
And
any
there was
more, you can
nothing in
email
the
through.
report along the lines of
Thank
what,
you, Mr. Bakul.
what Mr Russell has just said. I've
Thank
read
you.
it thoroughly, and there is nothing such words in that report.
Okay, that now takes us to public statement time. I have 3 public statements. The first is from Mr Jason Hunt from Statewide Planning in regard to item 3.1, the proposed amendment to number 178 local planning scheme number 17 to rezone lots number 6 Tipper Court Hazelmere from general industrial to special use to facilitate a commercial retail hub, speaking against the officer's recommendation in support of option 2. And Mr Hunt, you have 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor, for the time. We're here representing landowners in the 3A precinct, and we're currently in the early phases of preparing a structure plan for their land. We've reviewed the provided information and the proposed mixed-use development plan and raised the following matters for the Council. 1. Sewer. The site currently does not have a connection, and the HESAP advocates dry industry land uses in those circumstances. The concept plan shows a number of land uses that we would not consider dry industry. Can the site be viably connected to sewer? 2. Bushmead Road and Lloyd Street are part of the RAV network, and the plan is advocating an additional access point via a 9-metre crossover onto Bushmead. We have concerns with how this will impact traffic both on those roads and the area in general. Stormwater. The site plan shows a large area of impervious surfaces and no shown area of stormwater storage management, and this is a huge area in the Hazelmere area. The site contains sensitive land uses as per the EPA guidelines. Development of this site with these sensitive land uses will prejudice the development of neighbouring general industry due to the requirement for buffers and setbacks. The proposed land use are better suited to the fringe of the HESAP, where this type of retail centre can act as a transitional land use between the general industrial land and the residential land, as referenced in the officer's report option 2, which we seek you to endorse. The land in Precinct 3A on the western fringe has been identified in the HESAP as a suitable location for most of the requested land uses in this scheme amendment. It also has sewer and the required infrastructure in close proximity. This is a more suitable and appropriate location for a retail centre, allowing it to act as a transitional land use between the industrial land at the core and the residential land to the west. What is proposed in this scheme amendment not only reduces the viability of such sites, it provides uncertainty for landowners. In summary, the proposed scheme amendment does not follow the approved HESAP, a council-endorsed document, and threatens the viability of the transitional uses in the identified transitional precinct. Therefore, the council, in our view, should select option 2 and not initiate the amendment process.
Thank you, Mr Hunt. The second statement is from Mr Dave Knight in regards to item 6.1, the annual meeting of electors, consideration of motion 7. Mr Knight, you two have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Dave Knight, Midland. Thanks for the opportunity to speak about this. It's an important one for the city to plant trees, and we need the city to be proactive in this regard. But I think it's fair to say that it's been reactive at best and inactive at worst, because the truth is, in parts of the city, nothing's been done about tree planting for decades. There seems to be a culture within the city not to plant trees if it can be avoided, but it really should be a core responsibility. It was once many decades ago, and the average age of the trees in places like Midland and older suburbs reflect this. I think it's obvious from the city's language and its response to this motion that's before you tonight that it doesn't really want to plant trees. The officer's comments that we either have to have a rate rise or lose a service to fund this program surely reflects this culture, because we don't have this conversation about when you want to drive a road through Midland, do we? No, we don't. When I submit questions to the city to find out where trees have been planted, I just get evasive, vague, generalised responses, which is in here, and it really tells us nothing. It's like staff are guarding state secrets here. I get the same responses when I call the administration, and it's either, we've got plenty of trees, and I'm sure if you go to the top of the quest and you look out on a two-dimensional, you'll see lots of canopy, but when you're in the hot sun on a street, I think it's a different story. Other responses are we will only plant trees if ratepayers request them. It's public land. I don't understand why this is an issue. If you can drive a truck up against it, it can be watered.
Thank you, Mr Knight. That's your 2 minutes. Thank you for your statement.
Okay. Well, can you do it, please?
Now brings us to the next one, which is Miss Diane Arvino in regards to the same item. Miss Arvino, if you're with us. You too have 2 minutes. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr Mayor and councillors. This is a statement in support of the motion of $100,000 to all wards for street tree planting Once upon a time, as evidenced by mature street tree plantings, planting street trees was a core operational function of council. We shouldn't even be standing here asking for this to be reinstated, but somehow this function has been lost to other expenditure, many surely not a necessity. Street trees in many streets are the only amenity within walking distance some residents have. No one can dispute the positive effect street trees have on temperature and mental health. Today, most other councils have aggressive planting programs in place. Planting and maintenance of street trees need to be put back on the budget agenda at City of Swan, recurring each year as a core function. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Arvino. That takes us now, councillors, to petitions. I have one petition containing 200 signatures, a proxy of which 90 are from the City of Swan, requesting the improvement of amenity at the Swan Regional Riverside Park Woodbridge by adding lighting, shade sails, shelters over the barbecues and picnic tables and chairs. And I need the recommendation here, councillors, that council resolve that the petition to be dealt with in conjunction with item 6.1, annual meeting of electors. The considerations are motion 13, so I just need that be moved and seconded. Councillor Parry, seconded Councillor Podolnik. No one else against. Okay, that carried. Deputations were dealt with last week. Announcements from the presiding member. Councillors, just have one thing just to say. There are a number of confidential items and also 7.1 advocacy which have to be dealt with tonight. So wherever the meeting is at 9:30, we will go behind closed door to deal with those, because there are contractual stuff that has to be dealt with today. So just be aware of that. Members' questions. Councillor McNamara. Yes, Councillor McNamara, you are too. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I refer to a meeting of the Council on the 16th of December, I believe, last. I'll just get my date right. And basically the story is that I used some words at that particular meeting that were perceived by others to be inappropriate. I use words like stupidity, stupid questions. I use words like crap. And the then mayor told me that I must sit down and be quiet and whatever. And so I left the meeting. Now, I just want to explain before. The word stupid and stupid questions means tediously dull. And I mentioned that there were stupid questions, and I wasn't staying in it. I spoke to the then mayor, not to the public gallery, and told the then mayor that I was actually leaving the chamber because I wasn't going to listen to stupid questions. Now, stupid questions literally, in the English Oxford Dictionary, means tediously dull. It doesn't mean that the person asking the questions is tediously dull. It means that the questions themselves, which I have an opinion of, and which the person asking the questions agreed that I had an opinion to actually share. And this is all on our streaming from the point of view of that. The word crap. Let me give you the Oxford Dictionary word for crap. A crap is, from the point of view of a noun, something extremely poor quality. As a verb, crap is often depicted as a talk at length in a foolish or boring way. Number 3, extremely poor in quality. And that's an adjective. So, when I use the word crap, I mean that I was bored with the actual questions because I heard them over and over and over again, meeting after meeting after meeting from this particular person. Mr. Mayor, this person accosted me days before that particular meeting outside Bunnings in Malaga and abused me verbally. He also accosted me at a public meeting which this city held in Ballajura. and was part of a group of people who physically and verbally, but definitely physically, hurt me on the night. So I kept my cool. On that particular night that we're talking about, from the point of me using these words, this particular person abused the CEO for not giving him proper answers to the questions. He abused the mayor because the mayor wouldn't give him enough time. 22 minutes and 25 seconds this person spoke for on that night. Was I bored? Yes, I was bored, Mr. Mayor. Certainly was bored. And I'll finally say that if this person really wants an apology, then look, it's the easiest thing to do is to say, I'm sorry, I'm really sorry. I'm really, really sorry that you need this apology. But if you want it, Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry you upset this council. But I done what my opinion was, and as a councillor, I am entitled to defend everything from my community, from myself and my fellow councillors and the staff. I'm entitled to do that. But yes, Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry. My apologies. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McNamara.
Mr. Mayor?
No, Mr. Baku. No, Mr. Baku. No, you got your apology. Thank you very much. Can you sit down, please?
If you think that's an apology, he just accused me
Mr.
of
Baku,
accosting him in Bunnings.
if you keep it up, I'll have you escorted from the chamber. Thank you.
Yeah. I heard what he said. He accosted
Mr.
me.
Baku, I've told you twice, once more, and you're out.
I'm going anyway.
Thank you very much. Okay, members' questions
You'll hear
for...
more.
Answers to questions that are taken on notice,
Councillor
I have nil.
McNamara will certainly hear more.
Okay, well, no, we're not taking notice, I have nil. So the next one is questions for which due notice has been given. So you have questions without notice. Okay, your question?
Oh, great. Actually, it relates to...
No, we're taking questions without notice. Oh, sorry, okay, you're right, yeah. Okay, just hang on to those for a minute, Councillor. We'll get to without notice for members. Okay, 10.2 is questions for which due notice has been given, and Councillor Johnson, and those questions have been answered in the green folder. Questions?
Yeah, I've got some follow-ons, Mr. Mayor. So, relating to question 5, how many noise complaints were there in the previous calendar year? The answer is 230. Of those 230, how many resulted in the issue of an infringement notice, issue of a noise abatement direction, issue of an environmental protection notice, or seizure of equipment?
I suggest you don't have to take it on notice.
May I take it on notice? Get information from council.
Okay,
Thank you.
Councillor, we're now down to 10.3, which is questions for which due notice has not been given.
Mr. Mayor, I'm still got follow-ons from...
How many more you got, Councillor?
Well,
you could let me know.
I put in a lot of questions on notice, Mr. Mayor. I took the time, so it's normal practice to have a follow-up, and so I'll follow up if I may. Question we've got here is a question I've asked previously, is can we have the acquittals for the Ellenbrook Collective, which the Ellenbrook Collective provides to the city? Thank you.
Ms Lay?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the details of the acquittals is an administrative process where we're checking off that the conditions for which the funds were allocated have been met. They're not really at the level which a councillor would need to see.
Operational. You got a further question, Councillor?
Yeah, follow-up. So I guess the question is, have they been received and are they in good order?
Ms Lay?
Mr. Mayor, I think that's answered in the answer to question 7, that full acquittals have been provided back to the city.
Mr. Mayor, that's not what it says. It says full acquittal of this funding is provided back to the city. It does not say has been provided back to the city. So the question is, do we have those acquittals for the last financial year?
Ms Lay?
Mr. Mayor, I believe so.
Thank you.
Can we, for the next meeting, can we get that question answered, please? Do we have those acquittals?
Yes,
and are
Mr.
they
Mayor.
full and complete?
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Catalano, you have questions which notice has been given.
Yes, thank you. It relates. One question relates to 3.12, which was the about the Bellevue lunch bar. I'm sorry, but I did not understand Mr. Russell's answer when regarding this issue of the land being zoned residential and yet the lunch bar, which is commercial, was actually approved under delegated authority. I didn't understand how that happened, sorry, and I'd like that clarified again. Thank you.
Mr Russell, if you could explain that slowly, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It was approved under delegated authority. The application was a permissible use in the zone by virtue, as I explained, of the additional use provided for lunch bar, and there's another raft of uses that are allowable on that site, which is residential development zoned. It's within delegation, else it wouldn't have been approved. And frequently in instances where there are no objections or submissions, for whatever reason, opposed to the application, it's capable of being dealt with under delegation and it's consistent with the framework. It's dealt with under delegation. I will often present items to the council where I think it is in the interests for the council to see it, but there are no guidelines on that, Mr Mayor, written down. It is very much gut instinct and long years of experience that lead to an understanding when something might be of interest to the council or might be of interest to other parties when you don't get anything around formal comments or an advertising process. I can't probably provide much more than that, Mr Mayor, as to why that application was dealt with in 15 under delegation.
Thank you, Mr Russell.
Yes, sorry. Just following on from that, then. So, were submissions was it put out to advertising so that people could actually make these submissions? So, how could the submissions be made if just was it put out to the public for them to make the submissions?
Mr Russell. Okay, thank you.
I've got another question. This relates to 6.1 and motion 4. When is the local government inventory of municipal places, or the municipal inventory, when's that likely to be reviewed?
Mr Tan.
We're in the process of reviewing the list.
Currently now, so I just wanted to know, are you going to be taking into consideration the fact that the Heritage Council are going to be issuing new guidelines later on in the year?
Mr Tan.
Leon will answer that.
Leon.
Through you, if I can just clarify. The Heritage list was reviewed in 2017, and under the Act, normally you review the list every 4 to 5 years. So there's what we're doing at the so in 2017 we've reviewed the Heritage list. We then got Guildford listed as a town on the Heritage list, and we're now reviewing the Guildford Heritage policy is being reviewed at the moment. Through that process, you may get new properties added to the inventory, but to answer the question on when the inventory is due for a full review, it would be 5 years from 2017, 4 to 5 years, so by 2021-22.
Thank you, Mr Manley.
Thank you.
Any further questions, councillors, from members? Councillor Coley.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a follow-up question in relation to Jan Benaim's question. Is heated bitumen storage and transport considered a light industry under Local Planning Scheme 17? The answer was no, but I'm interested in, if it is no, what is it considered there under Local Planning Scheme 17 if it's not light industry?
Mr Russell.
General industry, Mr Mayor.
General industry. There you go, councillor.
I'm just interested in general industry classification. The site is approved with storage tanks and workshops. A workshop, is that considered compliant with the general industry classification?
Mr Russell.
Yes.
Just some follow-on questions, if I can, unrelated to that matter.
Okay, further questions?
I've got 4, Mayor. Mayor, I'd like an explanation, if you can, on why on Monday the 3rd in Ellenbrook at what the community thought was an Ellenbrook Collective Community Collective meeting why you called the police on two councillors and community members who were present to attend the meeting to prevent them from entering the building, bearing in mind that the Ellenbrook Community Collective is somewhat funded by the City of Swan.
Councillor, the Ellenbrook Community Collective is an incorporated body. It's holding AGM. An incorporated body is not open to members of the public. Reports are provided to members only. And under the ACNC conditions, that is the law. They may be open to the public if the organisation chooses to do so for the point of promoting its achievements and promoting new members. Therefore, the people trying to enter that building, which is private property, were not permitted to do so. When they were requested to leave, when they did not do so, police were called.
And second question, did you make the call as either in your capacity as Mayor or as Councillor for the City of Swan?
I made it as a citizen.
Third question, do you think the calling of the police on your fellow councillors and the community you represent is the best way to use limited police resources?
Councillor, within that room were a number of elderly people that are volunteers and a number of people classed as minors, associate members 15 and 16. Their safety, their concern and well-being was mine first consideration. So yes, given the aggressive nature of those people trying to enter the room, yes, it was justified.
Last question, if you may. You've also been recorded as saying, and directing this to Councillor Johnson, don't worry, mate, tomorrow I'm meeting with the department and I'll be talking about you. I'm interested to know whether you've raised the behaviour of Councillor Johnson with the department.
That could be coming, Councillor. So if you've got another question, you better answer it because we're going to move on in a minute. Thank you. Councillor Johnson.
Mr Mayor, do you understand the law of defamation?
Yep. Councillor Richardson, you got one?
How much money has the City of Swan contributed to the Ellenbrook Community Collective over the past 5 years?
Those questions have been answered numerous times, Councillor, and they are
no.
in the reports.
No, there's no figure in that answer on that
They have
page.
been answered previously a number of times, Ms Lay.
They have, Mr Mayor. I don't have the figures to hand, but if you refer to the minutes as listed in the response to Councillor Johnson's questions, they're fully detailed
that question
there.
is listed there.
Thank you. This is for the CEO. The question is that they will be funded from 2021. Has that already commenced, or will that be this financial year?
Say what?
Excuse me, Mr Mayor, I don't understand the question.
So the email that you provided that states the funding for the Ellenbrook Arts for this year is for the 2021 financial year. Has that begun already?
That's a separate issue to the collective. The Ellenbrook Arts is an enterprise unto its own.
Then has the city ever viewed the constitution
not
or
yet
governing
awarded.
rules of the Ellenbrook Community Collective before deciding to contribute funds?
They're totally unrelated items.
No, they're not. I just asked,
collective-
has the city ever viewed the constitution or governing rules of the Ellenbrook Community Collective?
It's not the city's right, if I'm wrong.
Well, considering
No,
that they contribute funds to the ECC and to the Ellenbrook Arts, it is a question.
Mr Mayor, I would have to go and confirm the application process that ECAG and ACAG have and the information that they request of people or groups applying for grants.
And there's a lot of groups apply for grants through those systems.
Then my next question is, will the CEO be demanding an explanation from the Ellenbrook Community Collective as to why, although you've explained that it was a private meeting, that where will I find a copy of the Constitution from the ECC, a current copy of the Constitution and the collective's rules?
Councillor McCulloch, you might be able to answer that.
As they're not available online or through the collective's Facebook page.
The collective's constitution, as approved by the Associations Act and the model rules, is available to committee members of the collective. And I would have to speak to the association as to whether we can make them available at the request of other people.
On that Tuesday night, there was only 2018-19 copy, and a new constitution was rejected. So there isn't a current copy of the 2020 constitution. Where is the old copy available to members of the community?
think you got that answer that Councillor McCulloch will have to check with the association's governing body to see if that's released.
But you actually yelled at me that night at the doorway that if I'm so smart that I should be able to find it, quote, on video, quote.
Yeah, well, I stand by that.
I'm sorry, that's not acceptable to the community, nor is it to a council, nor is it live streamed to the public, that if you yell at someone that I should be smart enough to find it, and if I can't find it and other members of the community can't find it and it's not available, where is the copy of the Constitution?
There you go. Have you got a further question?
Certainly do.
Keep going.
If the ECC is incorporated and it runs by AGM constitutional rules, where was it advertised to the public?
Doesn't have to be advertised to the public. You can go
It's
back. No. You can go to the Act and read it. It states that the AGM for an incorporated body is open to members only.
According to your rules at the door, there was a predetermined door list and we weren't on it.
Okay,
so
well, this is not relevant to a meeting of council.
It's very relevant
It's
to
an
the
issue you can take
community
up
who have
at
asked the
another
questions to be asked through their local councillor. Why were they prevented?
Yes, Councillor Congleton. And I'm calling time on it, councillors. And we're moving on with the agenda. If you've got another issue, you can take it on.
Point of order, Mayor. You've been asked a question. I'd like to hear the answers to them. Thank you.
No, I'm taking them on notice then. Thank you.
Question, Mr Mayor.
Last one, councillors, then we're moving on.
Mr Mayor, given the questions that have been asked and the inability to participate in this AGM, we're unable to get access to the financial reports. We've not been given copies of the acquittals. Nobody seems to know whether we've got the acquittals. Can I ask, why all the secrecy?
There's no secrecy, councillor. The CEO has already said that she will give you the answers on the acquittal.
So
and
can I have a copy of your financial report then, please, councillor?
No, you can't. It's not open to... You can read that...
There's no secrecy.
Councillor, we're moving on. Councillors, now that takes us to the leave of absence, and I have Councillor Johnson from the 13th. Councillor McGrath. Oh, sorry, my apologies, councillor. Yes.
Yes, my first question, Mr Mayor, is to yourself. Why did the presiding officer allow a motion to be debated and passed by this council that was totally contrary to a motion previously passed by this council and that has never been revoked? That's my first question.
Specifically?
The motion was, I didn't want to get into this because we have a councillor that may want to actually declare an interest regarding the buffer zone. It was the 80-metre buffer zone motion that was passed by this council, which is totally contrary to previous motion.
I think I'd have to take that one on notice and go back over the meeting, councillor, to be honest.
Take it on notice, that's fine. And the second one is, can a motion or decision that has serious implications for a legitimate and approved contract between the city and a third party be allowed to be actioned? Thank you.
Ms Albright, could you take that one on notice? Yeah, that. Okay. Any further members' questions? Thank you, councillors. Takes us to 11, leave of absence. We have leave application from Councillor Johnson from the 13th to the 15th, February inclusive, and the 17th of February. I move that be accepted. Councillor Congleton.
Thank you. 12th of May to 17th of May. No, I'm not doing that.
So, Councillor Congleton, 12th of May.
12th of May, 17th of May, 6th of June, 14th of June.
And the 6th and 14th of June. Any other leave of absence?
Mr Mayor, Councillor Parry from the 22nd of April to the 3rd of May.
Okay. Any other leave of absence? Councillor Catalano. To February. Councillor Richardson.
13th to the 16th.
And Councillor Scanlon.
Yes, from the 13th to the 16th, the same.
Okay. Thank you. Any others? Okay. I need a motion that those be accepted. Councillor Parry. Second, Councillor Nino. Anyone against? Declare them carried. That takes us now confirmation to the previous minutes. The resolution required to occur in the minutes of the 22nd of January 2020. So any confirmation of the minutes, councillors? Councillor McCulloch, second. Councillor Parry. Is anyone against? Declare those carried. That takes us now to item 13, which is any business left over from the previous meeting. Councillor Congleton. To you can do that, yes.
I'd like to move a motion to look at the debate on tonight's meeting to 3 minutes with 4 items withdrawn and no extension.
Per speaker, that is, I guess. Okay. Do I have a seconder? Seconded, Councillor Brnovnik. Is anyone against? Councillor, do you wish to vote or just put it straight to the vote? Straight to the vote. Okay, those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Those against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Can't be right, we're one missing. Those in favour? Those in favour of debate to 5 minutes? In favour of the motion, it's 3 minutes. 3 minutes. Councillor Congren's motion. Okay, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Those against? No, 1, 2. Okay, so those in favour of the motion? Right. Hands high. Right, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I was right the second time. Okay, and the rest are against. So the motion's lost. Okay, councillors, that takes us now to item 13.5, which is a new policy for election caretaker provisions. Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that Council resolve to 1. Adopt policy C169, election caretaker provisions, subject to the following amendment, not amendments. 1. Clause 4.9, amend to clarify that the City's media services not be used in any way that might favour or cause detriment to a candidate. 2 is removed. And then 2, record the reason for the change of office recommendation is to clarify that the City's media services are to promote the City's activities and not to favour or disadvantage a candidate.
Okay. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Catalano. Is there anyone against? You wish to pose an amendment. Let's hear your amendment.
The amendment would be to add another clause that election material not be permitted to be, what's the word, hung on the buildings, available at sites which are in part or fully funded by the City of Swan.
That's already in place, Councillor. You're not allowed to do it. It's already there in the policy. If you put them on a city building, they'd be removed.
But in part funding, we've got Ellenbrook Community the Arts Centre in Ellenbrook. We've got Brockman House that are being used for councillors to put posters up, and we fund these facilities. We provide funding for them. But we've got Brockman House and the Arts Centre in Ellenbrook, and I think there's one other example too. I'm just trying to get around that issue where incumbent councillors seem to have.
Well, Brockman House is a city building anyway. So the same applies, and at this point in time, we're not funding anything for Ellenbrook Arts Centre.
Well,
That's
Mayor,
subject to an EOI.
We've had Councillor Lucas have his posters up there at the previous election. We've had Councillor Wainwright at the election before then, and still we're getting nothing done about this. This is the perfect opportunity to do something.
It's already in the policy, Councillor, so you need to report it when it happens. So it's in the policy that if they're on a city building, they'll be removed.
Well, we didn't get it removed. We were told in the case of Councillor Lucas that we couldn't get it removed. They were an independent organisation.
Can I make comment, Mr Mayor?
Yes,
I placed no advertising material at Brockman House. If people who work at Brockman House put something on or in the building, I was unaware of it. Otherwise, I'd have asked them to remove it. Thank you.
Mayor, just on that point, you can get around every issue.
Well, you moved an amendment.
I didn't put the poster up.
Okay, but you moved an amendment. Councillors, you moved an amendment to something that's already in the policy, so therefore, no, I won't accept your amendment. Now, someone else had one. Okay, question, Councillor Congleton.
In my previous time on council, we had a restriction in relation to the size of the signage. The size of the signage no longer exists.
Is that correct? I recall, wasn't it nothing in excess of a square metre?
Mr Mayor, I'd have to take that on notice and review the signage policy and come back to you. There is a restriction, but I just can't remember exactly what the details
I think it was
are.
too. Further question?
It used to be a little bit bigger than 1 square metres. I think it was 3 square metres, but what I would like to see is I'd like to move an amendment, but if it's there somewhere, I'll be moving an amendment.
You can put up as a notice of motion later on. When you're actually relevant.
Mayor, just before I agree that amendment shouldn't go ahead, could I get clarification from staff that actually is in the caretaker provisions?
Ms Albright?
4.7 Part D.
It's in the policy already. It's an existing condition about city buildings.
That's contrary to my amendment, Mayor. My amendment is not only for city facilities, but for facilities that the city in part funds.
Well, it depends how you fund them, but it's still a private property. So, Councillor, is that you're the mover? Not acceptable? Okay.
I'd like to proceed with the amendment, Mayor, if I could.
Okay, can I have a second to that to amend it? Do you understand it?
Make a point of order. I think we should just make sure that microphones are on tonight, because quite a lot of times the microphones haven't been on.
Councillor, just
Thank
remember
you.
to turn your microphone. Okay. Good. Okay, we're going to need a motion to alter the amendment. Is that a fair amendment, Ms Albright? Or does it change the motion any substance? It doesn't really, does it?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'm concerned that such a change would be overreaching the city's jurisdiction to restrict political information at a property that is not a city facility. I'm not sure that we can do that.
Okay, so it probably needs more research. Can always come back later.
I'll withdraw the amendment, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Someone else had an amendment, I believe? No? Okay. So, was there anyone against Councillor Henderson's motion? Councillor Johnson? Do you wish to debate it?
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Yeah, I'm surprised. Okay. Councillor Henderson, you open the debate.
Mr Mayor, before we start, point of order, I think what you said just then was really inappropriate.
Yeah, well, thank you. Councillor Henderson, you open the debate, please.
Mayor, I don't believe that I need to spend much time on this. Less than 3 minutes, even, I think. But the purpose of the exercise here is to ensure that we have balance, that it isn't just a one-sided argument. I mean, it could easily be that someone might have a preference one way or another in the way media is dealt with. This makes it clear that there should be absolutely no preference. There should be flat, and we don't have issues arising that might cause conflict. Thank you.
Councillor Catalano, you're the seconder.
Thank you. I just want to say that there is a difference between favouring and detrimenting, or being detrimental to another party. So I think they do need to be both there, because they can be distinguished from one another. And I won't add any more. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Johnson speaking against the motion.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. My reason, Mr Mayor, is I believe that the caretaker period limits the power and effectiveness and efficient use of council time. If you look at 4.3, decisions to be avoided, it talks about approval of community grants, maybe, but major planning scheme amendments, they need to be progressed, changes to strategic objectives and strategies, and so on and so forth. Mr Mayor, cast my mind back to October 2015. I remember being sat in the public gallery, and eventually I asked the question, aren't there any caretaker provisions, I asked, because the council was about to take a decision about the Midland Oval. I was a bit concerned that there might be a change in composition of council, and it would be unwise to make a decision a few days before the election. And I was told by the CEO that no, there's no such thing as caretaker provisions, Mr Johnson. They can make this decision right now. So I thought, fair enough, I suppose that's the answer. And what transpired at that meeting was that the decision about the Midland Oval redevelopment master plan was deferred to the following meeting, to my absolute astonishment, when they had the power to actually make the decision. And what do you know? At that very next meeting, I was sat on this side of the red rope, so I was actually able to influence it. Look, I don't think there's any reason to limit council making decisions. So that's my reason for being opposed to it. It's mostly 4.3. Some of the rest of it I'm opposed to, but some of it's good. My second reason for being opposed to this is it was sprung on us without any briefing. So council were not notified of this when it first came to council 3 or 4 months ago. It appeared out of the blue, no briefing, and in fact it was even a late item. It wasn't even part of the agenda. It was an extra, an add-on. So for that reason, I'm completely opposed to the whole thing. I'm not just opposed to Councillor Henderson's alternative motion, as amended or not amended. I'm opposed to the entire thing. until such a time as we've had an appropriate time to review the concept and understand it. So I'd just like to foreshadow a deferment for 6 months so we can get an appropriate briefing. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Speaker for the motion? Speaker against the motion? Councillor Kiley.
Thank you, Mayor. I stand to support Councillor Johnson. I'm just concerned about 4.3 as well, where we are avoiding irrevocable decisions that will have a significant impact on the City of Swan or the community. Councillors, we only meet here 12 times a year or less. I think it's 12 or 11.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
It's
not relevant to the amendment that's been moved.
Sorry, I missed your point of order, Councillor.
Sorry, the debate isn't relevant to the amendment that's been moved.
Exactly, that's been taken care of. So
Thank
we're
you.
talking about the main item now. Councillor Scully, you want to rethink and continue?
No, thank you.
Okay. Speaker for the motion? Speaker against the motion? There could be no other speakers to put that motion. Those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Those against? Is 4. Motion is carried. Takes us now to 13.6, proposed classroom additions on the existing place of worship at Lot 101, number 25, Suffolk Street, Caversham, and Councillor Zanino.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, I rise to move that the Council resolve to refuse the application for the proposed classroom additions to the existing Chin Church at Lot 101, number 25, Suffolk Street, Caversham, for the following reasons. 1. The application is considered to be inconsistent with the Objective D of the Swan Valley Rural Zone applicable to the land, in that it is not considered to accord with the planning objectives 8.1, 8.3, 8.4, 8.6 and 8.7, insofar as it does not assist with the protection of viticulture nor complement the rural character of the locality. And 2, the application does not accord with the aspirations for the amenity and character of the Swan Valley Rural Zone as set out in the proposed amendment number 176 to the City of Swan's Local Planning Scheme number 17.
Okay, can I have a seconder? Councillor Kiley. Is there anyone against? Councillor Lucas. Do you wish to debate it, councillors?
Yes.
No? Who was the other one against? Councillor Johnson, wasn't it? Henderson, rather. Do you wish to debate it? Okay. Councillor Zanino, if you'd open the debate, and you had 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, firstly, may I say that I personally have nothing against the Chen Christian Church and have the utmost respect for them and support and condone what they are doing. The only problem is the location within the Swan Valley. Councillors, this is one of those developments that should have never been approved in this location. Nevertheless, it was, and we now have to accept it. Needless to say, it was approved 6 years ago, and they still haven't complied with the conditions of that approval. Not to say two wrongs don't make a right. They should be happy with for getting the church approved, but no, they now want more. They want a gatehouse, which the council has approved, and now 8 classrooms for a Sunday school. Councillors, this is a prime location on West Swan Road. For those who are not aware, the northern strip along Banara Road and the western side of West Swan Road was and is supposed to be a rural buffer zone for the Caversham development. Obviously, no inappropriate development should occur within this buffer. This falls within the Area B of the Swan Valley Planning Act legislation. This application is contrary to the objectives of the Act
and that is why the Swan Valley Planning Committee recommended refusal. City staff agree with the opinion of the Swan Valley Planning Committee that the building does not accord with the aspirations for a rural character that have emerged from the Kabelki review and which the Council has endorsed through proposed amendment number 176 to its local planning scheme number 17. Because it doesn't meet objectives 8.1, 8.3, 8.4, 8.6 and 8.7 of the legislated Act and does not accord with the aspirations and amenity and character of the Swan Valley Rural Zone as set out in the proposed amendment number 176 to the City of Swan's local planning scheme number 17. Now, objective 8.1 is the protection of viticulture. For those that don't know, this was a property which contained viticulture in the past, and this development does nothing to protect viticulture. 8.3, the encouragement of tourist facilities provided that they do not detract from the rural character of the area. This development certainly detracts from the rural character. 8.4, the encouragement of traditional activities of the Swan Valley and industries associated with viticulture, horticulture and cottage industry, provided that they are compatible with the rural character of the area. Once again, this is certainly not compatible. 8.6, the compatibility of design, siting and landscaping with the character of the area. This certainly does nothing to enhance landscape or rural character. 8.7, the discouragement of uses that are incompatible with the rural character and traditional agricultural activities of the area. Once again, this is certainly not a traditional agricultural activity, nor is it an appropriate development for this rural buffer. Councillors, if this is approved, it will certainly be another nail in the coffin for the Swan Valley and the legislation. Councillors, I urge you to support this recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Zanino. Councillor Coley is the seconder.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, I urge you to support this motion as well. It is another nail in the coffin for the Swan Valley. It's another chip away at the Swan Valley and what it represents to us and the rest of the community. We have made a decision last year to approve Amendment 176, and the core of that is to stop inappropriate development in the Swan Valley. We all agreed on it, or apart from those the new councillors too, I believe. We all agreed that we should stop inappropriate development in the Swan Valley. Now, this is not an extension of a church. This is an additional use, it seems, because they're putting in so many classrooms. It's not just an extension of the church building, which I would somewhat approve, but this is somewhat of a dual use in terms of what they're going to be doing with this development. It's another chip away at what the Swan Valley represents. It should be a buffer zone. Now, Councillor Zanino's quite eloquently pointed out its non-compliance with the Swan Valley Planning Act on at least 5 points. So on planning grounds in respecting the Swan Valley Planning Act, it shouldn't be approved. We need to back the community, councillors. We need to back our own community, as we have often done, but we also need to back communities from other areas. And we are hearing constantly on issues in Guildford, Balladura, Allenbrook and the like, that community, who we all represent, we've all taken an oath to represent, we need to back them. They're not just a community just because we don't live in that area, we've got to not support it. We might personally think it's okay because it's not going to bother me because, hey, they've got a shortfall of 40 car parking bays, so let's just, it doesn't bother me because it's not in where I live. We need to start thinking about the community that lives in that area, and that's what Councillor Zanino's motion does. It says we need to support you as a community. Now, we have representatives for the Swan Valley who turn up here unpaid regularly at every council meeting. We've got them in the community now. We've got 2. Thank you, Elaine and John, for turning up again. This concerns community members. Don't think of them as the people who live down the road. Think of them as your neighbours. We should be supporting their community. And then when it comes to your turn, some issue, some controversial issue in your area, it's their chance to support you. Guildford's got a lot of issues, and we've seen time and again that we're not getting the support in Guildford. We need to support the Swan Valley. The Swan Valley needs to support us. Swan Valley needs to support Allenbrook and Ballajura and issues there. We need to start thinking about what's important to the ratepayers in the areas, and not start this parochial, I don't live there, they're too far away from me. I mean, we're a very vast landscape, the city of Swan, and it's very easy to fall into that trap. But having been a councillor now for 2 years, you get to know the whole area. You need to start respecting what ratepayers want in other areas. It's not just about your own backyard, councillors. So I encourage you to support this motion, and I think it's in the best interests of not only the people in the Swan Valley, but everybody who will share in the Swan Valley in the future, because, as Councillor Zanino said, it's just another nail in the coffin. But it's not only a nail in the coffin for the Swan Valley, it's a nail in the coffin for the next issue that you might bring up in your area. So let's all support community. Let's all get behind the ratepayers of the whole of the city of Swan by supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coley. Speaker against the motion. Councillor Henderson.
Mayor, councillors, thank you. I want to start off with about 1994. 1994, a whole lot of noise about the Swan Valley being urbanised, big slabs of it. I was one of the key drivers. I was very actively involved. In fact, in 95 I was elected council on one of these issues. And fundamentally, I wanted to see the Swan Valley protected. I wanted to see the rot stop. I wanted to see grape growers flourish. Now, let's just have a bit of a think about that. The first church that came to council after the Swan Valley Planning Act came into play was Dream Builders on Great Northern Highway. Councillor Lucas probably remember that. And I fought tooth and nail against that because my view was that it didn't fit the bill. Well, I think that was pretty much the beginning, because it got through and others got through and more got through, and they're all over the place. Now, when Amendment 176 came up, I seconded Councillor Zanino's motion to put a stop to the rot. The bottom line is that I support the religious community across all religions and all aspects. The point is, the opportunity arose for people to get a lot of land for their car parking and for their churches and the like, to be able to move into the valley, close to all of the urban parishioners, and that's happened. Now, can I make a point here? The council approved the Chin Church application in that buffer zone that Councillor Zanino talks about. It's an approved use. Now, I can accept one very important point that's been made tonight, and that is that it has not been screened from West Swan Road, and I expect that to be done. I expect staff to be on it and to make it happen, and if they don't, I'll be asking questions why not. Bottom line is that is a fundamental to the church being there. It had to be screened. The height of it was reduced to satisfy issues about the overall size of it out there. Point I want to get to there is that it's there. They have a use. The use is a religious use. It's physically there. You have the ability to do ancillary activities on a use, a bit like my wife. She's got some horses. Well, if I want to build a shed over her arena and I apply, I would have thought that would be an ancillary use. It's a little bit like they want to build some Sunday school rooms for the ancillary use, but screen it. It has to be screened. It's in the motion. The motion is the staff motion that it has to be screened. Wanted to dispel a couple of points. Protection of viticulture 8.1. It's It's a church. It's never going to have vines grown on it. It has an approved use. So it makes 8.1 irrelevant. 8.3, tourism. Well, you can be pretty sure that there won't be a lot of tourism there. So, frankly, that one's wiped out. Viticultural activities. Well, again, they're not going to grow grapes there. They're not grape growers, quite clear. Landscape. They do have to, as I said earlier, to screen it. And agriculture, well, clearly it's not a traditional use of church.
Yeah, 1 minute, Councillor.
Thank you. And I've argued that from day one. The point is it's there. It's an approved use. So all of those points have been dispelled. And I think staff have assessed that as well. So the nail in the coffin is the fact that it's been approved. Done. Dusted. I just want to cover a couple of other points too. If you look at what they want as a percentage of the overall facility, it's tiny. The church is the dominant feature as you drive down West Swan Road. What they want to do is something that is minor. I would not be fighting for this if it weren't allowed. I'm fighting for their rights, the use of their land rights as an ancillary use. That's why I'm standing up here. There will be people, some in the gallery, who will decry what I say and think that, basically I should be standing up for this motion that's before us.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson.
But I can't.
That's your 5 minutes. Thank you. Speaker for the motion? Speaker against the motion? Councillor Lucas?
Thank you. I just want to reiterate the words of Councillor Henderson, and I perhaps could agree with most of the stuff that Councillor Zanino had stated, except for the fact that the church already exists. And if you look at the key issues, even if Amendment 176 were in effect today, the application is still capable of approval as an extension of an existing use. The last point Councillor Henderson made, I think, is very relevant. The lot size is some 28,800 and almost 50 square metres. The Sunday school church, which they want to build, is 345 square metres, which leaves some 28,500 square metres of the lot still viable. You take out the size of the church, the car park, there is still a lot of land there. And yes, I'm also disappointed that the screening, as part of the approval 6 years ago, has not been installed, and I will be visiting the church personally and making my comments known to those in charge that the screening is paramount if this is successful tonight. Read the report. I know the location very well. And Councillor Zanino quoted from one part of the officer's report saying that the city staff agree with the Swan Valley Planning Committee that the building doesn't accord with the aspirations of the rural character. But the rural character was destroyed when the building was approved 6 years ago. It provides a buffer zone between West Swan Road and the subdivision now happening behind the church in Caversham. So when you weigh it all up, councillors, that the character of the area as defined by the existing approved building, the additional impact of this additional 345 square metres when you weigh up against the benefits to the Chin Church community, I don't believe is considered sufficient to warrant refusal. I'm glad to hear Councillor Kiley is now on board with everything Swan Valley. I think he was leading the charge against another church out on Newcwich Drive or thereabouts with the RSBB church from memory, but I fully support 176, but it's an existing...
Point of order, Mayor, if I could. That comment from Councillor Lucas is uncalled for, and I don't think it's factual in any basis whatsoever.
Well, we can also go back and check, but carry on, please, Councillor Lucas.
I lost my train of thought with that interruption, Mr Mayor. So I'd support you to refuse this one. I'm a great supporter of the Swan Valley, but the church already exists. I'm thinking of the future teachings of the children of the people who go to the Chin Christian Church. just like the Sikh Gurwara have classrooms to promote and teach their culture and history. I think that's also important, and that the Chin Community Church should also have that opportunity of having classrooms for their children on Sunday school. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lucas. Speaker for the motion. Speaker against the motion. Okay, if there's no further speakers, I'll put the vote. Those in favour? Oh, sorry, my apologies, Councillor. You're right of reply. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of points that were made by Councillor Henderson with regard to Council's approved the Chin Church. It's there, screening. Well, just because Council made a mistake 6 years ago, in my debate, I did say, well, two wrongs don't make a right. Do we have to make the same mistake 6 years on? Surely we've learnt something over the past 6 years. And also, Councillor Henderson made comments with regard to viticulture, and it's never going to have viticulture on the blocks. I can remind everybody in this chamber that the Swan Valley is fairly large in area, and if you were to go around and check how many blocks don't have viticulture on them and how many blocks do have, the ones that don't have viticulture would obviously outnumber the viticultural blocks, probably 5 to 1. Now, does that mean that every block that doesn't have viticulture can be developed? But if that's the case, then I can tell you something. You need to make everybody out in the Swan Valley aware of that, because I'm sure that all those people that are growing viticulture, maybe not all of them, but most of them, will rush out with bulldozers and pull all the vines out with the prospect that they're going to have their block developed. And the council will support it because it's got no viticulture. So you have to make a decision. Just because a block doesn't have viticulture on it, then leave it as a rural block. You don't have to develop it, because that's when the Swan Valley and all its objectives of the Planning Act get lost. Because once you start having development after development after development, you may as well drive down Great Eastern Highway rather than West Swan Road or Great Northern Highway and have a rural ambience, because all those blocks, if they can be developed, that's what will end up happening. And I think that Councillor Lucas also made reference to the rural character. Councillor Lucas also said that he's concerned about the young children and the future teachings of children. Well, I'm quite sure that the Chin Church, as has been stated, was approved 6 years ago. It's very large. It's a very large building. Now, if they wanted to carry out Sunday school, I don't think they need 8 classrooms, because I'm quite sure that they could carry out the Sunday school within the existing building, or probably another one building, which is probably a quarter of the size of what they're asking for. To me, and if you recall the deputation last week, this obviously is something which has future potential to turn into a school from
Point of order,
kindergarten.
Mr. Mayor. I don't think that was discussed in debate.
Yeah, I think you have it wasn't, Councillor, so you can't bring in,
Okay.
as you're well aware, new evidence in your right of reply.
So, councillors, you know, I ask you to take everything into consideration, and I think that, once again, they should be quite happy with what they have, and this, because all you're doing is refusing the 8 classrooms, and I urge you to support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Zeno. Those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Those against? I say, Councillor, sorry, just clarify, Councillor McNamara, you vote for or against? Okay, so that'll be 1, 2, 3, that'll be 8. Those against? 6. Motion's carried. Sorry, Councillor, I didn't see your hand over the screen. Big stretch on it. Okay, that takes care of all of those previous items. We now move to Part B, and the first item is 1.5, Establish a Design Review Panel, and a proposed motion from Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. My motion is that Council resolve to approve the draft POL 1.13 Design Review and associated terms of reference for the purpose of advertising under 2.4.1 of Local Planning Scheme number 17 for a period of 21 days, subject to the following modifications to the attached Appendix 1 terms of reference. 1. Clause 3.3 to read. A minimum of 4 panel members shall be drawn from a pool of up to 10 to review each item. If an item has heritage impacts to buildings on the City Heritage Inventory or a building over 100 years old, then at least one heritage expert will be included in the panel. 2. Clause 3.4 to read. Selection criteria for membership on the design review panel include, but are not limited to, A. Demonstrated knowledge of the composition, character, heritage and desired built form for the City of Swan. B. Possession of relevant qualifications, expertise and experience relevant to the City of Swan in the following disciplines: urban design and architecture, landscape architecture, heritage, town planning and energy efficient building design and sustainable development. C. Any heritage expert on the panel shall have academic qualifications relevant to heritage, including history, art history, archaeology, conservation science, heritage botany and horticulture, Aboriginal studies, and shall have local knowledge and experience of the heritage of the City of Swan, and in particular the Midland, Swan Valley and Guildford localities. 3. Clause 0.35d to read. A report with recommendations for appointment presented to Council for approval. Clause 3.6 to read. Membership is for a 2-year period, and this equates to 1 term, although the Executive Manager, Planning and Development may recommend to Council to reappoint any member, and members can serve more than 1 term. Clause 3.8 to read. Where a vacancy in the Design Review Panel occurs, eligible persons shall be drawn from previous nominations for the Design Review Panel and shall be presented to the Executive Manager, Planning and Development for selection and submitted to Council for approval. Failing this, the process set out in item 3.5 above shall be followed. The term for any new appointment is up to the 2-year date previously determined by the Executive Manager, Planning and Development, irrespective of how long that remaining time will be. 6. Clause 5.2 to read. Design Review Panel meetings are open to the public and elected members and are to be held in the Midland Town Hall Council Chamber. The public and elected members do not have the right to speak or to make written submissions at the Design Review Panel meetings. 2. Approve the inclusion of $50,000 in the draft 2021 annual...
Councillor, if you can just read the changes because the rest are as per the
report. All right, 2 and 3 don't change. 4. Record the reasons for changing the officer's recommendation is to 1. Ensure heritage impacts are considered by the Design Review Panel. 2. Allow for transparency of Design Review Panel proceedings. 3. Enable Council to approve the Design Review Panel membership.
Okay. Seconder? Councillor Catalano. Is there anyone against? There is. A question, Councillor McNamara.
My question is from C to C. Heritage expert member on the panel shall have academic qualifications. Are these paid academic people, and who will pay for them?
The answer to that is academic qualifications. That's all it says. It means that the person appointed to the panel has academic qualifications, so they have a Bachelor of Arts in history or they might have a PhD in history. It doesn't mean they necessarily are employed as an academic, but they have academic qualifications.
Okay, right. Yeah. Councillors.
I understand that, Mr. Right on. The question is this another way of getting an academic qualified additional heritage person on this panel?
Mr. Tan, anyone wish to answer that?
Correct.
Or is that going to be a matter for debate?
I beg your pardon, I didn't hear that. I was coughing, sorry.
I think Councillor McNamara's question was it a way of getting a heritage person, additional person. I think that was the intent of the motion.
Through Mr. Mayor, as stated in 2B, right, the panel will consist an experienced person with qualification, expertise and experience in heritage. One would assume that when they lodge their CVs, we would then see their qualification. To me personally, 2C is irrelevant. It's covered under 2B.
Okay, that's for councillors. Right. Speaker again, Councillor Johnson, there is speakers against, so you're going to have to open the debate.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, this motion's fairly straightforward. It covers transparency. As a council, we're committed to increasing our transparency. It supports the heritage of the City of Swan, which is important. We've recently, last year, I think in July, we declared, the state declared that Guildford was a heritage town, and it also provides for council oversight of this design review panel. So let me explain. So transparency means that the design review panel meetings are held in this chamber in public, just like a JDAP. The only difference is the public can sit over there and listen, but they don't speak. The design review panel is designed for expert input to the developer. So it's not designed, it's not a sort of forum for the community to influence. That comes later at the submission stage, at the application stage, when it comes before council, if it does that. So seeking to achieve transparency, which is in line with our objectives. The second item, been a few questions about already, heritage. So what I'm seeking to achieve here is the original, the officer's recommendation had a pool of 8 architects, landscape architects, so on and so forth. I'm expanding the pool by 2, and that 2 of those additional pool members, not panel members, would have qualifications in history, art history, archaeology, conservation, science and so forth. They're not architects, they're people with knowledge of history. So we're making those people available on the panel. When when a panel is put together, if there are heritage items or buildings over 100 years old that need to be that are going to be discussed, then the panel can still consist of 4 people, but one of them will be an expert in heritage, as defined by having academic qualifications in history, art history, and so forth. So the reason for that is sometimes it's things are overlooked by architects. They feel they know about heritage, but they may not actually have a deep understanding of the history, art history, archaeology of the site, and they may not understand that we are custodians of a very important location in the City of Swan, and that is Guildford. So that's why I've added this in. In terms of oversight by council, the original motion did not allow council to approve the selection of the members of the pool, not the panel, the total pool. So the officers are still deciding which 4 members will constitute a particular panel. The staff will recommend a pool to us, I guess, every 2 years, and it will be brought to us in reports saying we recommend these 10 people be in the pool. And we get oversight of that, and we can approve it or otherwise. So it's just a matter of getting that oversight in place. So, councillors, I guess that is basically it. So it's in summary, it's about improving transparency of the proposed design review panel process. It's about including heritage in there, because I think since this concept came along, Guildford has been declared a heritage town. And it's about continuing to provide council oversight of the planning process. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. Please give your due consideration to this excellent and very long motion.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Catalano as the seconder.
Yes, thank you. I don't think that this just necessarily applies. I mean, the establishment and the panel aren't just going to do the work of heritage. They're going to be doing the work of design across the City of Swan, and I think in some ways the panel, if it's constituted well and broadly will actually add to the kind of design or the design inputs that are actually currently lacking. And there's still a lot of new areas to be developed, as well as heritage areas to be conserved. There's going to be areas that where changes are going to happen, and we need to make sure that the best people are on this panel. We're going to pay them quite a lot of money, and I should say that is the whole reason for the panel is not something that's coming from this council. It's actually coming through the state government. They've stipulated that we actually institute this panel. So they're going to provide a new approach to the planning system. So let's make sure that the panel is one that meets all the broad requirements of the City of Swan. And I mean, it's going to be actually quite tricky. You know, it's not going to be a simple matter for this panel to actually get their heads around the diversity of the City of Swan. It's different places, it's different communities, and for that reason we really do need to ensure that we get the best people on the panel. It's not like some other more homogenous council where, you know, it's very similar throughout, and therefore you don't need to have the broad diversity of the panel members. So the point is also, really, we are the council and we should be retaining oversight over who goes on this panel. You know, planning, it'd be great for them to provide us with their recommendations, and that is fantastic. That's what we'd like to have that recommendations put to us. But actually, at the end of the day, we should be making these decisions, because we need to make these decisions on behalf of the communities and the ratepayers that we represent. So we need to retain our oversight in terms of who's on the panel, whose term is extended on the panel, as well as whose position is terminated on the panel. So the issue of the heritage expert, look, Council, we are going to have to wake up to the fact that heritage in Guildford is extremely successful for this council. It's successful in terms of economic benefit. It's successful in terms of what it contributes to our city in terms of people visiting, in terms of tourism. It is actually connected to the success of the Swan Valley. The heritage of Guildford actually is a gateway for the success of the Swan Valley. And in fact, the Swan Valley, really, we must remind ourselves, is the oldest European settled area in Western Australia, and it itself contains a lot of heritage. These are extremely valuable assets that we do need to recognise are contributing economically
30 seconds,
and socially to our community. So it's not just about Guildford, it's about the whole of the City of Swan, and we need that oversight. We need to retain control of that oversight, and we need to make sure that the best people are on the panel, stay on the panel, and aren't dismissed or terminated without our oversight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Speaker against the motion. Councillor Lucas.
Thank you, and I'm sure the people of Albany will be disappointed because they were there 2 years before people in the Swan Valley settlement, Councillor Catalano. So they're not the oldest in Western Australia, they're the second oldest. Going on from that, you should have all hopefully had received one of these design guidelines. It's put out by the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage Office of the Government Architect, and it's a guidance for local government to set up and operate design review processes. So we should be following their recommendations, as Councillor Catalano said. And if you look at the first page, under the panel roles and responsibilities, point 2, panel members are required to treat all discussions and information about applications with sensitivity and confidentiality. Well, that's fine for the panel members, but if you have members of the public there, what onus do they have to keep confidentiality? And if you go to the second page, observers, design review meetings should be closed to members of the public, as information discussed can be commercially confidential. So I can't support Councillor Johnson's motion based on those two alone. It was in April last year that the City decided to set up a design review panel at our ordinary council meeting back in April of last year. I'm quite happy with the policy put out by the staff, and I can't support the alternative motion before us. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Lucas. Speaker for the motion.
Amendment, Mayor.
Okay, we'll hear your amendment.
To delete, I think it's point 6, clause 5.2 to read. Delete that. Remove design review panel meetings out of the open to the public and elected members.
It's contrary to the motion, isn't it? Contrary to the motion. Okay, it needs to be accepted by the mover and the seconder. Councillor Johnson, Councillor Catalano? So you're happy to that for removed? Okay, so that is now removed. So, you wish to speak for the motion? Okay, Councillor Kiley.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Lucas, for pointing out that in consistency with the recommendations by the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage. I will point out, though, that the objective of Councillor Johnson's motion was about transparency, which I think is a good objective. However, we've somewhat removed that, given the information you've provided to us tonight. It's also about being inclusive of heritage considerations, which I think is a great outcome, and congratulate Councillor Catalano on pointing out that it does provide an economic benefit to the City of Swan and its constituents. And this amendment, this motion also provides for council oversight of the whole process. I'd like to point out, though, and pointing out that document here, it's a design review guide. As Councillor Lucas said, it provides guidance for us as a councillor. But then he turns around and says that we should be following what they tell us to do. But, councillors, it is just a guide. It is not a rule of law. It's basically to give us some direction on how we establish this. We have unique requirements within the City of Swan in respect of our heritage buildings and the like. So I think we should take on Councillor Lucas's advice and treat this as a guide only, and mould this review panel as to what best suits the City of Swan. And I would like to point out too that having an extra couple of panel members effectively wouldn't affect the cost of running this panel, but it might provide benefits in terms of drawing on the appropriate people with the right skills. In respect of Councillor McNamara's concerns about somebody with a qualification, councillors, most people now in the community, there's just a growing proportion that have university qualifications in some respect or another. I mean, years ago it wasn't the case, but I would imagine we're probably up to around 50% somewhat across Australia that might be looking at university qualifications going forward. And that's ever increasing. So any person that gets on this board in the future was more than likely to have an academic qualification. This affects, the way we establish this affects the design of the Ellenbrook Pool. It affects the design of the gymnasium in Ballajura. We can draw on people with expertise in particular areas. So it does affect everything that we do in the City of Swan, through to Bellevue all the way to Ballajura. So please support this. I think it's a good improvement to the design review guide put out by the department. Thank you.
Speaker against the motion. The speaker's for. No further speakers. Councillor Johnson, you're right to reply.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Not a lot to add to that, really. Yeah, just to confirm what Councillor Carley said, that this does not increase the cost. There will still only be 4 panel members, and at any one time, they're the ones that are paid. If you're on the pool and you never get called, you don't get paid. And the Heritage panel member with academic qualifications as follows will only be present when necessary. So if you're in Ellenbrook, Ballajura, what have you, you won't be subject to any heritage analysis. Councillors, I think this is entirely in line with what we're trying to achieve for our city, so I'd encourage you all to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10. Those against? 1, 2, 3. Motion carried. All right, good point. Could you just have that show of hands of those who are in favour? 11 in favour and 3 against. Okay, that takes us now to item 1.6, which is Midland Activity Centre Design Guidelines, and Councillor Podovnik.
Okay, so I'm referring to 1.6, the Midland Activity Centre Design Guidelines, and ask that Council resolve to defer consideration of this matter until the 11th of March 2020 ordinary meeting of Council. The reason for changing the officer's recommendation is to allow interested councillors to be briefed in an informal briefing session on how these documents relate to the Midland Activity Structure Plan and the Midland Activity Centre Master Plan, and ensure councillors fully understand these plans before they are released for public comment.
Okay, I have a seconder. Seconded Councillor Congerton. Is there anyone against? Carried. Item 1.7, the Midland Redevelopment Urban Guidelines, and again, Councillor Podovnik.
Again, I just refer to 1.7 Midland Oval Redevelopment Urban Design Guidelines, and I ask that Council resolve to defer consideration of this matter as well until 11th of March 2020, ordinary meeting of Council. The reason for changing the officer's recommendation is the same as I cited before, so I read it again?
Yep.
Okay, so the reason for changing the officer's recommendation is to allow interested councillors to be briefed in an informal briefing session on how these documents relate to the Midland Activity Structure Plan and the Midland Activity Centre Master Plan, and ensure councillors fully understand these plans before they are released for public comment.
Okay, we have a seconder. Councillor Parry. Is there anyone against? Carried. Item 2.1 now is the Guildford Hazelmere Local Area Plan. The motion from Councillor Kiley.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, my motion is that Council resolve to defer a decision on the Guildford Hazelmere Local Area Plan for validation of the consistency and status of information provided across the document by councillors in liaison with relevant staff. The reason for changing the officer's recommendation is to prevent misinterpretations by readers of the document.
Okay, do I have a seconder? Councillor Johnson. Is there anyone against? Well, I'm going to pose this because I'd like some explanation, Councillor. Would you like to explain to us the so-called misinterpretations by readers of this document?
Should I...
I'll do it in the form of a question.
A question? That's fine.
Matt, if I could just...
I'll raise just one point. It's a reference to forming a committee for the celebrations, the bicentenary celebrations, where it refers to celebrating a Swan River Colony Bicentennial Advisory Committee. There's inappropriate language there. I appreciate there's a misinterpretation. It could be misinterpreted as meaning that we are going to be celebrating only the European elements of 200 years rather than the Noongar, have a Noongar involvement. I just think there's inappropriate language being used in that document, and seeing it's going to be in place for 5 years, I'd like to see that change made. There are a number of other issues that I don't think have been included from the community consultation. If you read the document, the submissions at the rear of the document, I don't think many of the actions or requests have been included to the extent that they should be in the total actions, local area plan actions in the document. There's also reference to the Meadow Street Heritage Precinct Master Plan, which, while at the time may have been applicable for just the Meadow Street area, we now have state heritage listing, and I think that action plan is probably outdated, and it would make people think that we're only implementing actions for the Meadow Street area rather than the whole of Guildford. There's some of them that I've picked up early in the piece, Mayor, but it does point out the actions, the strategies and actions that a number of actions have been developed to achieve the vision of this local area. And if this vision goes forth as it is, it will be in place for another 5 years. I just think we can hold off for 1 more month, and just to tidy it up a little bit, take out some irregularities, as they might be called, and bring that back to Council for approval next month. That's all.
Question. I can ask a question, Mr. Tan, or actually Mr. Vanderlyn. You might like to answer this. If we change anything to this, or that list of Councillor Kiley's, we then need to resend it back out for advertising, public consultation on those changes.
Just answer that, Mayor.
No,
It'd only be the action plans, not the
Well, I'm just
not the
asking
substantive.
Councillor Lyndon Vanderlyn if we have to do that.
Mr. Mayor, if the changes are changes that reflect or make things clearer, it wouldn't have to be re-advertised. If substantial changes to the actions are proposed that leads to different actions that the community haven't seen in the advertised version, that will have to be re-advertised. But what I understood from Councillor Kiley in discussions about this was that his intention is not to have substantial changes, it's to align things within the document. So I would think, having listened to him before, and that it wouldn't have to be re-advertised.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I've had my questions answered. I'll ask Councillor Henderson, you got a question?
Mayor, we've had, I think, 2 weeks for these questions to be raised. Could perhaps councillors explain why it hasn't happened in the last couple of weeks?
Specifically?
Matters that were raised, I would have thought that there'd be an opportunity for those to be brought up as motions to change here tonight. That's what I'm trying to find out why that hasn't happened.
Well, yeah, but I think there's indication from Mr. Vanderlyn he's had discussions recently with Councillor Kiley. So my answer to that would be, I think, in this case, if those discussions had taken place over a couple of weeks, I would suggest that would have been a more encouraging way to go about it rather than just popping up at the last minute. But
and if I can, Mayor, also discussions with the community and other councillors on the issue as well over the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, but I think with the issue in terms of what we do, it's about raising the questions in here. But I do take your point that, yeah, probably some of those questions could have been asked and concerns raised at briefing where you had the opportunity at the agenda forum to ask staff. But Mr. Tan, you wish to make a statement?
To you, Mr. Mayor, there's no harm in deferring it, provided councillor sit with staff and go through which part needed change. We have a look at it, see where there's material change to the thing, where it needs advertising. If not, you come back with a modified piece of document so that it sort out all the queries.
Thank you, Mr. Tan. So just ask that question again. I don't need to oppose it. Is anyone against the motion? In that case, we'll declare it carried. Okay, the next one is item 3.2, the Local Development Plan, Morrison Road West, and Councillor Podovnik.
Great. I refer to 3.2 Local Development Plan, Morrison Road West, and ask that Council resolve to defer consideration of this matter until the 11th of March 2020 ordinary meeting of Council. The reason for changing the officer's recommendation is to allow interested councillors to be briefed in an informal briefing session on how these documents relate to the Midland Activity Structure Plan and the Midland Activity Centre Master Plan, and ensure councillors fully understand these plans before they are released for public comment.
Seconder, Councillor Johnson. Is anyone against? Carried. Okay, that brings us now to 3.5, the change of use of a shed to ancillary dwelling and associated works at lot 56, number 107, Lakeview Drive, Gidgegannup, and Councillor Zanino.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, I rise to move that the Council resolve to defer the application to a future meeting of Council to enable the applicant time to make arrangements with their neighbour, the owners of number 111 Lakeview Drive, Gidgegannup, to clear the vegetation on their land that contributes to the bushfire attack level rating of Balfordy to the applicant's shed.
Okay, the seconder. Councillor Henderson. Is there anyone against? Carried. Item 3.6 is the proposed reception centre at lot 2979 102 Hammersley Road, Caversham, and again Councillor Zanino.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, once again I rise to move that the Council resolve to 1. Refuse the application for the proposed reception centre at lot 2929 number 102 Hammersley Road, Caversham, for the following reason, and that is the proposed reception centre is considered to be inconsistent with the rural character of the locality.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Henderson. Is anyone against? Carried. Item 3.7 is the agricultural intensive mushroom farm and associated development at lot 9, number 5531 West Ron Road, West Swan. And Councillor Henderson has declared a proximity interest and is leaving the room. And Councillor Zanino, again, it's yours.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, once again I rise to move that the Council resolve to 1. Refuse the application of the proposed mushroom farm on lot 9, number 5531 West Swan Road, West Swan, for the following reason, and that is the proposed mushroom farm is considered to be inconsistent with the rural character of the locality.
Okay, do I have a seconder? Councillor Kiley. Is there anyone against? Councillor Lucas. You wish to debate it, Councillor? No. Okay, no wish to debate. We'll take that straight to the vote. Those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Right, 1, 2, 3.
There's 2 people out of the
2 out of the room. Yep, 11, and against is 1. Motion is carried. Okay, item 3.10 is a transport depot, associated hardstand and access ways and proposed shed at lot 109, number 2299 Great Northern Highway, Bullsbrook, and Councillor McCulloch.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, the proposed motion, reading the items in bold, is 2. Within 60 days of the date of this approval, the applicant owner is to enter into, and I'd like to add, if I may, a binding legal deed with the City of Swan that sets out arrangements for payment of the developer contribution liability applicable by the development of this land in the event of the gazettal of proposed amendment number 169 to the City of Swan Local Planning Scheme number 17. Moving down to number 6, within 90 days of the date of this approval, the applicant is to submit to the specifications and satisfaction of the City of Swan works plans for the 1. Widening of the carriageway of that portion of the northern side of Warren Road between the existing site crossover and the line-marked edge of the intersection with Great Northern Highway, and 2. Widening of the site crossover to Warren Road. The road and site crossover widening works are to be implemented within 60 days of the date of the approved works plan. Recording the reason for changing the officer recommendation is to enable the development and business to be lawfully approved with appropriate conditions that address vehicle access and secure future potential development contributions should the applicable draft DCP amendment come into effect.
Thank you, Councillor. Seconder, Councillor Kiley. Question, is it? So can I just wait? Oh, a seconder?
Yeah.
Councillor Zanino, you have a question, Councillor Kiley.
Mayor, I intended to go against that Councillor McCulloch's motion, but given the DCP components put in there, I'm inclined to support it. I'm just interested from staff, is that a workable option in terms of a legal agreement? Have we done that before, for example?
Yes, we have. Yep, we have. The deed was put in place, for example, with Amex Development prior to the DCP so that they could get on with the development. So that's an example of that.
Thank you. And I've just got an amendment, if I could have that considered. under point 3 in respect of landscaping that a 10, say a 5 metre buffer area from the alignment on Great Eastern Highway be lined with trees, like there be
Great Northern Highway.
Great Northern Highway have an alignment of trees abutting that fence line, just as a buffer in the landscaping plans.
Councillor McCulloch is the mover. Yeah. Okay, so therefore it's not. Okay. Okay, we have a mover and a seconder. Is any against the motion? Be no one against. Carried. Okay, now we go to item 3.12, the proposed extension of time to the term of approval for the lunch bar at lot number 400, number 107, Clayton Street, Bellevue, and the warehouse at lot 510, number 109, Clayton Street, Bellevue. And Councillor Scanlon.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. My motion is that the Council resolve to 1. Refuse the proposed extensions of time for the terms of approval for the lunch bar in Bellevue for the following reason. The planning framework applicable to the applications appears to have changed since the original approvals were issued by virtue of the recent state government announcement to relocate Midland train station ostensibly to a part of the current rail line in Bellevue, and this may have implications for land proximate to the rail line, such as these subject lots.
Do you have a seconder? Councillor Johnson. Is there anyone against? There is. Wish to debate it, Councillor? Don't wish to debate it? In that case, councillors, if there's no debate.
I would like to speak to the item, please.
I'll debate it, Mayor.
Okay, so you're actually against the motion?
I'd like to hear the debate, and I'd like to be involved in the debate, Mayor, if I could.
Well, at this point, no one's indicated they wish to debate it because there's no one. The only objector doesn't wish to debate it.
I'd like to debate it, Mayor.
You know, we're just talking for the sake of talking, Councillor. There's actually no debate indicated. So
I'll refuse it. I'd like to refuse it.
So you're going to vote for refusal?
Yes, and I'd like to hear the debate. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll tell you how this will work. I'll take the mover and the seconder, and Councillor Catalano, I expect you to speak against the motion, but as soon as you get off track, I will call time on the debate and we'll go to the vote. Am I clear on that?
That's fine, yes, okay. Thank you. I'd like to hear the mover and
okay, so
the
you will be
seconder.
debating against the motion.
I might change my mind.
No, that's not what I said. So, Councillor Scanlon.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I will be brief. So, since this application was approved, the state government's announced there'll be a new Bellevue train depot close to this site, which the Bellevue East Land Use Study recommends to be zoned as a residential site. The City commissioned the Bellis study, and I believe they've got it right in this being a residential area, which is amazing considering they didn't even know about the train station at that time. We've heard a lot about land use in Bellevue from both the planning staff and the Bellevue Residents and Ratepayers Association, and this is exactly what this argument is about. This is a future central residential precinct near a train station 1.5 kilometres from our major regional centre. It is in fact so close that I used to easily walk to work in Midland from this area. At the base of the hills, Bellevue is, as its name suggests, the place of beautiful views. It's a wonderful place to live, a place of rich history, and I believe we should be following on our own study. If you haven't read Bellis yet, please do so we can all see the vision of the community and staff of future development applications in Bellevue. I have seen throughout my lifetime the encroachment of the industrial area into Bellevue, and the very reason the Bellis study was undertaken is to provide direction to us in strategic planning. I'm thrilled that the City are currently implementing the beautification program of tree plantings in Bellevue as per the Bellis study, and this portion of land is going to become very attractive for housing. This location in Bellevue is getting more and more attractive to families as its proximity to the city and with the train station also. The Shire of Mundaring have identified a large portion of land just the other side of Clayton Street as a desirable location for a major subdivision. This is ideal residential land. The lunch bar at number 107 Clayton Street is owned residential development, under the City of Swan Local Planning Scheme. And whilst this was previously approved under delegated authority, it's now come to Council, and I ask myself if this is the best land use for this site with the changes that have occurred there. When you look at number 109 Clayton Street, it's zoned general industrial, but the Bella scheme recommends that it be zoned residential. We adopted the Bella study. It identifies this area for a change in zoning, so let's see it through. I'll be putting forward a motion next month to start the rezoning processes as identified in Bellas. We have to ask ourselves if this is the best planning decision given the changes that have occurred, and I cannot say that it is. If this development application came to Council today for the first time, would it be likely to be approved? Please consider that.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Johnson is the seconder.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. There have been a lot of changes in Bellevue in the last 2 years. The biggest one is actually just outside of the City of Swan, so just south of this site, just across the road from Wilkins Street. Along Wilkins Street, Councillors, is the boundary with Mundaring. What you find over there, between Wilkins Street and the Helena River, is a very substantial, new and very interesting-looking subdivision. It substantially changes how Bellevue is going to present, and basically Bellevue is now going to be part of a substantial residential area. Once the train line comes and the new train station arrives, people will be walking from that new subdivision in Mundaring through Bellevue to the train. It's entirely suitable for a residential area. So 2 years ago, a lunch bar might have been seen as a reasonable thing, given that there is a lot of apparently disused land in Bellevue. But Bellevue, the renaissance of Bellevue is underway, I believe, Mr Mayor. I think we're going to see big changes there. So I think it's a good thing that this extension of time has come to Council, because it's an opportunity for us to reconsider. So, Mr Mayor, that is why I'm supporting Councillor Scanlon's motion to refuse, because there have been substantial changes in the area, and that means we need to reconsider this application. So, Mr Mayor, I'd encourage councillors to vote for Councillor Scanlon's motion. I'm especially hopeful that Councillor Scanlon and I have persuaded Councillor Catalano to support us. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Catalano speaking against the motion.
Yes, thank you. Well, I just think that there's probably a hell of a lot of people in the area that use that lunch bar and rely on it. And the other thing is that I hate debate being stifled when people want to debate a matter. So they're my 2 points, and I haven't got anything further to add. Thank you.
The other speakers for the motion? Speaker against the motion? Councillor Scanlon, your right of reply.
Nothing further, thank you, Mayor.
Nothing further to say. Okay, councillors, those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Those against? 7. I'll cast my vote the same and against, so the motion is lost. So now councillors need a motion to move the staff recommendation. Councillor Congerton, seconder. Councillor Parry. Is there anyone against? There is. You wish to debate it, councillors?
No, thank you.
No. Okay, there's been no debate, and we'll declare that carried. I'm going to... Sorry, we'll put it to debate. Those in favour? Just about everybody, I would suggest. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we're moving the officer's recommendation. We have a motion, a mover and a seconder. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Those against? 6. Carried. Okay, item 4.1 is a footpath request for Johnson Street, Guildford. A proposed motion from Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, the street's not named after me, of course. My motion is that the Council resolve to upgrade the eastern upper path on Johnson Street as described in the report, set aside $300,000 in the 2020-2021 draft budget to complete the works, replant native trees to replace those removed, 4, request the CEO to write to Water Corporation requesting that the Water Corporation consider bringing forward asset renewal works on Johnson Street to financial year 2020 to 2021 to minimise costs for the City of Swan and Water Corporation. 5. The reasons for changing the officer's recommendation are: 1. Both existing paths are in poor condition and do not meet current Australian standards. 2. This path is used by pedestrians and cyclists from South Guildford, including students attending Guildford Primary School. 3. The upper path is the safest for children as it will have passive surveillance. 4. Separation of the new path from Johnson Street is needed for traffic safety reasons. And 5. There is no known reason why Water Corporation cannot consider bringing their asset renewal works forward. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, seconder, Councillor Scanlon. Question, Councillor McNamara.
With regard to this particular budget request, should that not have been brought to the budget review or budget workshop that we hold every year? This is, what can happen, Mr. Mayor. Every item, we may as well not have these budget workshops if all of these items come forward. We need to debate these at the workshop with regard to getting the staff and putting them all together, and this should be part of your wish list from the point of view of the budget process. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Mac. Look, I will answer that. Councillors, we add stuff to the draft budget at any time during the year, so this is only a request added to the draft budget. It's in no way saying they're actually going to get on with the job. So it's a draft budget to fill, and it would come under consideration when we have our budget workshop in coming weeks. Okay. So we have a move and a second. Or is anyone against? There is. Wish to debate it. Councillor Lucas? Yes. Okay. Councillor Johnson, can you open the debate?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, it's probably worth explaining, first of all, for Councillor McNamara, how this alternate motion came to be. It's in response to a lot of discussion going on behind the scenes with the community about how to upgrade this path. And the path is located between Guildford Primary School and the Helena River along the western side of Johnson Street, which is the Great Eastern Highway. Just a little bit further north, you come to the Guildford Hotel. Now, the issue is, with this path, is that there are actually, at this point, two paths situated on a very steep bank. The upper path is it's only about this wide, I believe it's 1.2 metres wide, does not meet current standards. And in addition, the upper path, which was put in place later, I'll come to that shortly, is right adjacent to the Great Eastern Highway. What it means is that it's a dangerous path for children to cycle along because although there is a small fence there, the fence would not keep vehicles from accidentally coming onto the pathway, and nor, as we know, as we heard from Rebecca McIlroy, who I know is watching now, nor would it protect children from falling over it into the street. It's a very dangerous location, particularly for children. Now, the challenge here is that the city have attempted to install a crash barrier at this location between the upper path and the road, but have not been able to do so because there is a Water Corporation water main underneath. So therefore we can't put in protection. The lower path could also be upgraded, but there's a problem with the lower path. The lower path was superseded by the upper path when there was some antisocial behaviour on the lower path that basically was caused by a lack of passive surveillance. So the upper path was put in to counter the lack of passive surveillance on the lower path having been deemed by some people as being unsuitable for children. So what we've got is two unsuitable paths. And not only that, this path obviously is used by school children coming from South Guildford. Which path do they choose? Do they choose the lower unsuitable path or the upper unsuitable path? Councillors, I've cycled along this path myself many times, and people go too fast on the lower path. On the upper path, it's unsafe. This is a major, one of only two major pathways between South Guildford and Guildford councils. So there are only two actual ways of walking between Guildford and South Guildford without swimming. The other one is over the pedestrian footbridge, I think on Pexton Drive or Riverside Boulevard. We have money set aside to upgrade that path on that bridge. But this particular pathway has been at issue for some time now. Lots of discussions have gone on with the South Guildford Community Association and the Guildford Association with Mr Coaten. And it was brought to council because of the difficulty of making a decision. So ideally, we would replace the path at the same time that the water main is replaced, but we don't know when the water main is going to be replaced. I believe this has been, and the community believe this has been going on for too long, so we need to take some steps. So we must have a satisfactory path that is safe for children walking and cycling to school from South Guildford. Hence, it is now on the agenda. So it was brought on the agenda by the staff, recognising how important it is. And this is a solution, albeit rather expensive one, that would satisfy all sections of the community, be it the school, the Guildford Association, the South Guildford Community Association, and I'm confident it would satisfy everybody. I'm pretty convinced, Mr Mayor, that if we do go and ask Water Corporation again and explain the broader social issue of this path,
Councillor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Water Corporation, I'm sure, could adjust its asset to replacement policy and decide to replace this sooner, so the cost could be shared. Councillors, it's children's safety that's at stake here, and we've waited a long time for this. The area is growing. We have many new residents, a larger number of children travelling from South Guildford into Guildford, thinking particularly of the new Rose Hill site subdivision and the other substantial South Guildford subdivision. So it's needed more than ever. So this is about modernising Guildford, connecting South Guildford and Guildford together. Or did I really say modernising Guildford? And I think its time has come. It's only something to put on the draft budget. We're not committed to it, but it means that we are considering, can we afford this in this financial year? So, councillors, I'd urge you to support this. It's for children's safety. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Scanlon as the seconder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So I'd obviously like to support Councillor Johnson in this. It's been something that's been spoken about in our community for quite a few years now, since before I got on council, and it's something that we've been trying to resolve, and it's something that causes the families of Guildford great distress, as you saw last week at the Agenda Forum. So one thing that I'd just like to add to Councillor Johnson's speech is the second access from South Guildford to Guildford for pedestrians is underwater most of the time of winter. It's also very difficult to access, and if you try to get up the other side, up to Guildford, I tried once pushing a pram up there and I tell you it's not easy. But that will be remedied, but you still have to cross the water, you still have to cross the snake area of Waterhall Park. It is not a safe route for children to traverse. So this really is the only route that children can take from South Guildford to their local primary school. It is heavily used. It is used by cyclists travelling down Great Eastern Highway to the Belmont area. It is used by workers travelling to the industrial sites in South Guildford. It is used, as you mentioned, by children travelling to Guildford Primary School. It is heavily used. There's often people going in high speed on their bikes and then children are trying to manage around them. It is a narrow path. It is not up to Australian safety standards. This is a dangerous situation. The fence is low. The fence is a cyclone wire fence. It is no protection for a child. I'm very fortunate that my children have a safe pathway to school. And I cannot let the children of Guildford go down that path any longer, having their lives at risk. Would we be at jeopardy of being sued should a child be killed and we refuse this motion? I don't know, but I don't think we should take any further risks with the lives of the children. Please support Councillor Johnson's motion. It's just to consider it at the budget and to ask Watercourt to bring those forward to minimise costs. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Scanlon. Speaker against question, Councillor Connican.
If this is defeated, Mr Mayor... Sorry. You're loud enough. Thank you. If this is defeated, Councillor Johnson can bring it up at the budget session for inclusion?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Henderson, you got a question?
Question, if I may. I just heard debate that a lot of bike riders use this path. Would we be able to get funding from Bike West or whatever they call themselves today towards the cost of this path?
Mr. Coaten?
We could apply for it. I don't know that the likelihood of success would be great. Those grants are normally submitted a year or two in advance of actually getting the money anyway, and it needs to be as part of a sort of a larger designated bike network. So I guess we could apply. I can't give any likelihood of the outcome of success as to what that may or may not be.
Another question, if I may. In regard to the request to write to the Water Corporation, could staff perhaps give us some indication of any success that they might have had with the Water Corporation in terms of getting them to lift a shovel and do something?
Mr. Coaten?
We haven't specifically requested them to bring the work forward as far as I'm aware. We've liaised with them in relation to the timing of their works and the scope of it, and they've indicated that their preference is for the path to be delayed, and when they do the renewal of the works, they're likely to do a realignment of the pipe as well. So, but we haven't specifically asked them to bring it forward.
Thank you. Okay, can I have a speaker against the motion? Councillor Henderson.
Thank you. Just briefly, I don't have a problem with being brought up at our budget discussions, that's fine. But in request, the part 4 to request from the Water Corporation is a total waste of time. My experience with Water Corporation is they make promises to do things and they take years to get them done, even if they do make that promise. Frankly, we've got water pipes bursting around the place that they just keep patching up, and they keep saying they're going to do the works. It never happens. So I just think there's futility there. If they think they're going to replace their pipe, they'll do it in their own time. Frankly, I see this part of the motion as being of little effect.
Thank you. Speaker for the motion?
No.
No, he's being gracious. Councillor Congleton?
Mr Mayor and Councillor, I'll actually support it. I had a view of not supporting it all in consideration. I thought it may have been, let's do it now, but it's not, let's do it now, let's put it in the budget and do it next year. And I think there's no reason why we shouldn't be writing to the Water Corp. If we get a go and get lost statement back from them, at least we know exactly where we are, won't we? But if we don't ask, what I was saying is that my parents say, don't ask, don't get, don't want. And this is the case of where we do want, so let's go ask them. And if they come back with an affirmative, perhaps it can be in a document that's binding. Who knows? But unless we ask, we'll never know. So I'll support it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Speaker against the motion? Councillor Lucas.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The reason why I don't support it, and I'm not saying there's a need for it, is that if you've read the document carefully, the agenda item, if you've spoken to staff, if this is approved tonight and we do put this on our forward capital works, and it happens in the next year or two, when the Water Corp come along to replace their pressure valve, they will rip that new footpath up to access their water main. They will not reinstate the new footpath because we know well in advance that they know what the condition of the footpath is now, and they will not replace the new one. So we could spend up to $300,000 on our next budget just to throw that money away, and then have to construct another footpath 3 or 4 years down the track at the same value. To me, that is not good use of ratepayers' money, councillors. I understand the safety concerns, but it doesn't matter. The emotive issues, I mean, there's 4 children walking along a perfectly good footpath last week or a week before. Someone runs off the road, they run off the road. It doesn't matter what protective barrier you try and put in place. I just can't, and you've seen it time and time again, where either local government and state government utilities don't work in cooperation. We saw it at the roundabout in Keene Street. We couldn't get on and redesign that roundabout because we were waiting, I think it was Western Power initially, and then the Water Corp to come and update some services. So the construction of that roundabout was delayed. Imagine if we had completed our roadworks and then the other utilities come along and dig it up and say, well, don't blame us because you knew what our program was. I'll be foreshadowing the officer's recommendation if this matter is defeated. And in addition to writing to the Water Corporation, I'll also be seeking the CEO to write to the Minister for Water to commence these works as soon as possible in conjunction with the City of Swan. There is no guarantee that the $300,000 we may put on the budget in the next month or two will not just be thrown away and wasted if the Water Court come in 2 years' time and rip up our new footpath, and that's why I can't support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lucas. Speaker for the motion? Speaker.
Sorry, man.
Your question
for the motion.
Okay,
If I
you
could
wish to speak?
Just quickly, councillors, this is just about putting it on the draft budget. That's simple as that. If we do end up, getting this money through at the end of the day, that's great. But at the moment, let's just bring it forward, as Councillor McNamara said. Let's put it on the draft budget, discuss it at the budget. Sorry, I think it was. Put it on the draft. Well, either one. Let's put it on the Councillor Congerton. Thank you very much. Let's put it on the draft budget and discuss it later. I think it's got a lot of merit. It's obviously needed by the community, and let's move forward with this. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker against the motion?
I just have a word to say against the motion.
Councillor McNamara.
Thank you very much. Look, this is really, really important for the community. I totally understand that. It's the process that I have a problem with. The job needs to be done as soon as possible. Putting it on the draft budget doesn't mean it's going to be done in next year or the year after. It doesn't really mean that. But put it on your wish list and make sure it happens and it's on the budget rather than the draft budget. That'll be quicker, much quicker, and it'll happen. And then do what the Deputy Mayor said, get the officers' report, get the people, the officers to write to the Water Corp and give them the facts of the matter and put it on them that if any accident happened to any of our kids, then it's on their back, and the Minister as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McNamara. Speaker for the motion? Speaker against the motion? No further speakers. Councillor Johnson, your right of reply.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, putting something on the draft budget is a pathway to putting it on the full budget. I think we'd all agree that. There are a number of ways of getting it onto the budget, but the reason this motion is here is because it is a response to a staff report and a recommendation. So we're responding to community needs, and what we're trying to do here is to find a way forward. So we can try writing towards corporation, and as Councillor Congerton said, why not write to them? It's the right thing to do. Just because we are putting it on the draft budget for 2021 doesn't mean it might end up happening in 21-22 if the Water Corporation come back and say, oh yeah, we can do it not next financial year but the year after. So it's worth trying. Is it a futile exercise? No, it's not, because it's not expensive. We can go and ask them. We can say, I'm sure the Water Corporation, having worked there, do have an interest in public safety. They are very safety conscious, and I'm sure if we said this is a matter of the safety of the children of the area, would you please reconsider your asset renewal programme for your enormous... It's actually the largest utility in the world. I used to work there, that's how I know this. It has more pipes than anywhere in the world. Most of the water corporations are much smaller. So it's an enormous network that needs to be maintained. They have a very sophisticated method of understanding what needs to be replaced. I know, because I was involved in it. Councillors, I know they have the capacity to adjust their asset renewal programme if we put a reasonable case. So that's why I think this is the right thing to do. I'd like to do it now. We've had a very good explanation from Rebecca McIlroy about why this is needed. She gives the example of her 2 children, but there are many other children walking this way. So, councillors, there's a danger we'll postpone it forever, and I think it's been going on for a long time. I think it's been brought to counselled by the staff, this is the time to make a decision. So, councillors, I urge you to support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor. The vote, those in favour? 10. 10 in favour, 4 against, declare it carried. Okay. Okay, councillors, now that brings us to item 6.1, the annual meeting of electors, consideration of motions. A number have been drawn. The first one is motion 5 and a proposed motion from Councillor Kiley.
Councillors, I'd like to defer consideration of motion 5 from the annual meeting of electors held on December 2019 until a report can be prepared by officers including information on expected volumes post the introduction of the container deposit scheme. Expected volumes, I mean by that waste. And B, the calorific value of the residual waste expected to go into the incinerator and additional gas required to assist in burning that material. C, who will pay for the additional gas? D, the implications of removing organic matter from the residual waste, thereby annulling the methane problem of landfilling the residual waste. There's a little bit missing out of my motion, which was the reason for proposing incineration in the first place, to reduce methane gas from depositing organic matter into the landfill. Record the reasons for changing the officer recommendation is to gather further information to determine whether or not a change to council policy is required.
Seconded, Councillor Johnson. Is there anyone against? You against, Councillor Henderson? Okay. Councillor Coley, open the debate.
Councillors, I'm just not familiar with where we're going with the issues of waste at the moment. We've had the fire at the Cleanaway site, which has thrown everything into disarray. We've got the introduction of the container deposit scheme. The whole waste recycling issue is in flux. It is changing daily. It needs careful consideration of how we move forward and where we're going to the future. There is considerable money involved in this whole project, and there is a commitment that I understand we have as a council committed to through the EMRC in terms of the incineration of our rubbish. Now, there's another consideration. The community, I don't believe, are fully across the issues, and there's new councillors on board who are also not across the issues in respect of the proposal to incinerate residual waste once we take out the bottles and the cans and the organic matter. The organic matter is important because it provided a calorific value to the potential incineration of waste. So, in that respect, we probably would have got a hotter fire if we had organic matter in there, tree clippings, grass clippings and the like. But we plan to take all of those out, which has been a great initiative from the state government and councils all around the state in terms of FOGO, taking out food organics and garden organics out of the waste stream. So that's a great initiative. It changes how we are going to move forward with our dealing with the issue. So this is simply about getting further information on what the impact of all these issues are. It's simply too little time to address those questions going into this debate tonight. We've also got the issue that the councillors have not read the document, the agreement with the incineration company, and I'd like that to be something that we could achieve in the next couple of weeks before we consider this issue further. Councillors, we're in a constant state of flux with waste. We need to really consider how we move forward with this. This motion was brought up by the community. I support it in terms of reviewing it. So please, if you just allow me another month to prepare an argument and then bring that back to you, I think it will be both informative and beneficial to the broader community in terms of understanding where we're going forward with the waste incineration potential. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson is the seconder.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, Mr Mayor, my 2 and a bit years on the MRC, one thing I've learned is we need as much information as possible about waste disposal. I think for that reason that a report on this subject wouldn't do any harm. It would be good for current councillors to have an understanding of the history of how we got to where we are and what our options are. I think we're actually in quite a good position. I think the direction we're going in is satisfactory, but I think a report will be a good thing. I think we really need to step up our understanding of waste disposal. And I must admit, councillors, before I got on council, I had no knowledge of it. But since I've got involved, I've found it actually is probably the most important thing we do. And I certainly found on the doorstep that understanding that people's interest in recycling and waste disposal was far greater than I could possibly have expected. So, councillors, I really urge you to support this report. Thank you.
Speaker against the motion, Councillor Henderson.
Councillors, you've only got to say the word incineration, and a whole pile of people say, "Oh, you can't do that. That's going to destroy the atmosphere." The European Union would have to be one of the biggest bunch of control freaks on the panel, on the planet. Wake up, Rob. Maybe it's getting later already. Now, the point I want to make is that Europe has got these things everywhere. They're all over the place. They've got lots of rubbish to get rid of. They burn it at high temperatures. It has been studied to death. I mean, it's been absolutely studied to death. The fact of the matter is that it is a method utilised throughout the world today to dispose of rubbish, and it is very effective. It is very, very well contained in terms of emission, and the fact of the matter is that you probably, if you don't get all of the methane when you stick it in the ground, you end up with just as much emission issue anyhow. I just want to make a couple of points on page 650, if you haven't been to that, councillors. A contract is already in place for the city to dispose of its rubbish with East Rockingham Waste to Energy plant. Well, we've done that, and the bottom line is that we've made that decision and we're moving on. So think of it as something that's been talked about. I can remember this being talked about when I was a deputy EMRC delegate in 1998. It was being discussed. And here we are years and years later, over 20 years later, and it's only just now come to the fore. The fact of the matter is that what we're talking about here has been thoroughly, and I mean thoroughly, investigated. It is the best way forward of all of the problems facing waste disposal, and we do need to get on with it. So I can't support this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Henderson, Speaker for the motion. Councillor Catalano.
Yes, thank you. Actually, I just recently read a report about the kind of dangerous particulates that are released into the atmosphere from incineration, not to mention the very dangerous residual or residue that comes from incineration. And, you know, at the end of...
Point of order, Mr Mayor. If these claims are made, I'd like to see these claims.
Beg your pardon?
So if these claims are made, I'd like to see these claims in writing from a decent source.
Well,
I can bring that. I can bring that to the meeting any time. I just read it last week after we had a discussion just a few weeks ago. I went back and read through the report, and it's all properly referenced. And I just want to say that as far as I can tell, the jury is out, and whilst the Europeans may have no other means to dispose of their waste other than incinerate it, at the end of the day there are, it seems, and it's pretty convincing, some very dangerous emissions coming from incineration. And at the end of the day, anything that doesn't go into incineration is a good thing. Obviously, there's just sometimes it's going to have to be used, but for us to wholeheartedly adopt incineration as a means of dealing with our waste and as a means of actually reducing the waste or the sort of cycle, and then also the fact that incineration means that we can't recover from that waste and recycle. So I think the jury is out on incineration, and I think that it's quite right that we really do carefully consider this, because once it's burnt, we've got poisonous outcomes that have still got to be dealt with. It reduces our chances of recycling and recovering, which, that everything's finite, everything requires energy, and once something is in the waste chain, if it can be recovered, it means it doesn't have to be produced again. And then there's also the issue of actually it doesn't provide us any incentive to actually ask our residents and ratepayers ourselves to actually look at reducing our waste, because we think, we'll just chuck it in the fire and it'll be all right. Well, there's nothing new about chucking it in the fire and burning it, and everyone is common sense that at the end of the day you're not going to be able to scrub out all those emissions, and there's going to be waste, very dangerous waste, that has still got to be dealt with. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Question, if I may.
Sorry, Councillor.
The question of staff.
Councillor Sanders, do you have a question?
Can Mr Coaten perhaps advise, does he know of any very dangerous emissions that might be emitted from the incineration process that East Rockingham Waste to Energy plant would be utilising, and any poisonous outcomes?
Mr Coaten.
Through you, Mr Mayor, the project has received environmental approvals from the state government based on stringent measures. They've used the European measures, so it is. I guess that's probably the best answer that I can give. It's been assessed by experts in the field, and it's been given approval by the state government.
Thank you, Mr Coaten.
Can I just clarify the point?
Oh, no, you can't, Councillor. You've already spoken to the item.
I just wanted to actually say that just because it's been given eco approval...
Councillor, I remind you that you've already spoken on, therefore you can't enter back into further discussion. So, Councillor McNamara.
Mr Coaten, look, this motion, and maybe to you and staff, whichever staff which wants to answer it, the motion that's before us, motion 5, review the city waste management, etc. Now, that was a motion from the public meeting.
Yes.
Okay. So this is a motion from council. But if this motion goes through for the deferral, my question is, it won't interfere with our current objectives from the point of view of our plans to do a contract, or I know we've entered into a contract. It won't interfere with any contract that we have, because it's a deferral of a motion of a special meeting of council, or a public meeting of council, ratepayers meeting, or whatever we want to call it. So basically it won't make any difference whatever to our setup, in the sense of what's happening with our procedures to enact this incinerator deal. That's my question.
Seeking clarification. Okay. Thank you, Mr Coaten.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Well, the contract has been signed, as Councillor Henderson pointed out. That was a decision of the previous council. So the contract has been signed. The facility has reached financial close. The project is proceeding. I guess in relation to would this motion change that position, that really depends on what council does when the report comes back to council in X number of months' time. So is that something that council wants staff to spend time working on, and presumably we'd get some consultants in for this as well, because some of it's quite specialised. If we did a report on that, that would come back to council, and I don't know what decision council would make. Council may make a decision that would have an impact on the direction that we're going. So I can't answer what council may or may not do.
Thank you, Mr Coaten. Mr Councillor Congerton.
Thank you. Further question. If the contract was to be amended or cancelled, there would be a financial implication back to the city for a break in contract?
Absolutely.
Yes, there definitely would be, I'm sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Speakers, I think we're speaking, looking for a speaker against the motion. Councillor Lucas.
Thank you. If we refer back on page 649, councillors, of motion 5 from the AGM of electors, motion 5 was review the city's waste management policy and investigate the possibility to rescind the 20-year contract for supplying waste to any incinerator, even when it's called waste to energy. So, as Mr Coaten has just alluded to, and on the following page, page 650, the last paragraph before we go to motion 6 is a contract is already in place for the city to supply waste to energy to the East Rockingham Waste to Energy plant. If the city withdrew from the contract, then it's likely that it would be liable for significant damages. In fact, Councillor Kiley said he wants this deferred so he can get more information, and he wants more information to find out how we can break the contract. If we break the contract, the city is going to be liable for huge damages. When you look at the staff comment, the state government's recently released the Waste Strategy 2030 document, and one of the strategy's guiding concepts is the waste hierarchy. And the hierarchy says, first of all, we should be avoiding waste. Then we recover it. We reuse it, we reprocess it, and we recycle it. We've set up a great recycling facility in Bullsbrook. I was there a couple of weekends ago, putting all sorts of rubbish, whether it was cardboard, iron. I was very disappointed when I read on the website that I could take tyres there, and then found out when I got there it's $8.50 to leave a tyre. That's why I noticed about 20 tyres on my way home dumped on the side of the road, because and I had about 20, so I'll be taking them to another location. Then energy and it won't be in the city of Swan, it's on private property. Then energy recovery, which is waste to energy. And then the last thing we want to be doing is burying waste back in the ground. That's at the bottom of the pyramid, or the reverse pyramid. So waste to energy is better than dumping waste in the ground. The technology, and I remind councillors, where's this happening? East Rockingham? Gee, that's the electorate of the Premier. I'm sure if it didn't get environmental approvals, he would be jumping up and down, let alone his electors in his electorate. So I can't support any motion that would try and get the City of Swan to break its current contract. We're in a 20-year deal. That decision has been made. It's done and dusted. And it's better than just dumping rubbish into the ground at Red Hill. We create energy from it. And yes, there is some residual bio-ash, but the microparticulates, after going through the filtration system, have passed all environmental concerns. So I can't support this motion in any form. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lucas. Speaker for the motion? Speaker against the motion? We no other speakers. Councillor Johnson, your right of reply. Sorry, Councillor Colley.
I'm happy for you to take that,
Same
Councillor Johnson, if you like. There's lots of issues to address, so I'll begin by possibly the waste hierarchy. Councillor Lucas, waste to energy was a better option before when we had calorific value in the waste, when we had clippings, when we had a whole range of material that would burn quite easily. We are going to be taking out food scraps. We're going to be taking out grass clippings and tree clippings and the like. Those are the things that were causing the methane production when we buried it in the ground previously. So back then, when this decision was made, burning the rubbish through an incinerator possibly was a better option. It would have produced less methane over time. But we are changing how we do waste in Western Australia, thanks to the Food Organic Garden Organic program and the container deposit scheme. We are constantly changing what we do. So the issue in terms of the waste hierarchy, putting landfill below incineration, is potentially very, very incorrect. The incineration was only there, as the argument for it was to stop the methane production into the atmosphere. That is changing, and that's possibly highly we can't rely on that anymore as an argument. We heard from the EMRC CEO recently, a couple of weeks ago, and if you'll all recall, he said on 2 occasions that waste to energy through incineration is not resource recovery. And I'll say it again, waste to energy through incineration is not resource recovery. And this is coming out from the CEO of the EMRC. So it's not resource recovery through incineration. He said it on 2 occasions, Councillor Lucas. So it is no longer considered a suitable means to recover resources through electricity generation. There's a question raised also about what is it releasing. It releases dioxin. I think it's a persistent organic or inorganic, I'm not sure, and maybe a report on this would persistent organic pollutant which persists in the community for a very, very long time. So that's one of the main outcomes of incineration. So we'll all be breathing it in. So here we are with WA with one of our greatest assets being our clean air and our sunshine and the like, and we're going to be pouring all of this dioxin and pollutants into the air. They're going to have scrubbers, and we're told that we're going to have scrubbers on top of the incineration. It's going to remove all of these contaminants, but that's just not possible, councillors. You know yourself, you try and set fire to a car tyre, as Councillor Lucas might have been doing on his way back from Bullsbrook. You cannot contain that smoke, no matter what you put over it. No matter how many sheets of material you put over it, Councillor Lucas, you're not going to be able to retain that smoke or filter it in some way whatsoever. Councillors, this is just a report about getting more information, because we don't have the information. We're not knowledgeable enough to make decisions on this at the moment. We need more information. This is the time when the state's changing what it does with recycling to consider this move forward. Don't bury this item by just saying, "Oh no, we've already signed up to a contract." We might actually be saving money if we review this. And I don't argue the fact that I'm not arguing that I might come back next month and say we need to look at our contract with the providers of this facility. But don't bury it, because it could be a cost saving to us in the future. It's not resource recovery. Talking about pollution in Europe, if you go to the No Burn, I just looked up a quick site. I said incineration, no-burn.org. 5 reasons why Europe's garbage burning is a big problem. European incinerators pollute, and they talk about dioxin in that area. European incinerators undermine recycling and reduction, so it undermines the efforts to recycle and reduce and reuse. Newer gasification and pyrolysis facilities aren't working either. It talks about
40
that.
seconds left, Councillor.
Public opinion and official policy is increasingly against incineration in Europe. And it's not only in Europe. In Western Sydney, they tried to put the incineration facility out there too. Here we have Western Sydney, known for its bogans, if you like. Don't mean to be disrespectful to Western Sydney people, but they didn't even allow it in Western Sydney. But here we are. What does that make us in WA if we're allowing incineration when the Western Sydney people didn't want to have it in their own backyard? But we're going to have it. So here we are in the Premier's electorate. So I tend to think that the Premier's constituents aren't aware of what's going on in their own backyard, because councils aren't talking about this.
Thank you, Councillor Kiley. That's your 5 minutes. Yeah, I know. So we get away with it. Okay, councillors, those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Those against? 8. Motion is lost. Okay, that brings us now to motion 7,
You got kids,
which is Councillor Scanlon.
Thank you. So,
So's putting your hand up for that thing too.
my alternate motion from
Councillors?
from the annual meeting of electors is that the council increase its allocation from $60,000 to $100,000 in the 2020-21 draft budget to supply and plant trees to increase the city's urban tree canopy.
Could I have a seconder? Councillor Kiley. Is anyone against? There is. Wish to debate it?
Yeah.
Councillor Scanlon, can you open the debate?
Thank you for the opportunity to debate this with you, Councillor Congerton. I appreciate that. The tree canopy cover from 2011 to 2016 in WA has decreased by 2.3%, and our hard paved surfaces in WA have increased by over 2%. Sadly, the City of Swan is one of the worst affected local government areas in the state, with a tree canopy loss of 8%. And that was in 2016. What is it now? As the urban growth continues, we must increase our tree planting at a greater rate than previous years. So please allow the staff the opportunity to do this by supporting my motion to increase the budget. When we consider the tree canopy of our urban areas, there's some that particularly stand out. Midland has an urban tree canopy of 10.39%, Bellevue 13.09%, Beachborough 10.87%, Balladura 9.7%, Bennett Springs 10.18%, Kiara 10.58%. We've always known that Guildford has a higher tree canopy than many other areas in the City of Swan, and the results in our community are clear. Guildford has social cohesion, lower crime, an active lifestyle, shady, cool streets, and a happy community. As a bonus, well-treed areas attract higher house prices. What happens when house prices increase at the City of Swan? Our rates increase. Everyone wins. The 2020 vision is for an urban tree canopy of 20%. We have an awful lot of trees to plant in most of our suburbs to get close to this goal. Sadly, the staff have advised that some parks in the older areas in Balladura and Beachborough are now nearly devoid of trees, and the staff are trying to remedy this. They just need the budget allocation. On the 2020 website, the City of Swan rates it as one of the most vulnerable of local governments for the urban heat effect. Our urban forest strategy is due to come out in April, and I very much look forward to seeing what the staff have come up with for this. In order for them to get started and what they've come up with in 2021, I propose that we give them an increase in their budget for planting trees from 60,000 to 100,000 to enable us to get greening the city sooner. Amazingly, the City of Armidale has undergone a 13.2% increase in canopy in recent years, and this has been through a dedicated tree planting program over the last decade. Greener spaces create better places. As our population in the City of Swan grows, so too should our green spaces to accommodate this. We can have more people and more trees. We just need to plant the trees. The staff can do this. We just need to empower them to do so with our budget. As we invest in our infrastructure to accommodate the growth, we must to invest in our green spaces. We need to focus on sustainability in our built environment. Is our future in the City of Swan to be grey or green? Thank you.
Okay. Seconder?
Mayor, first of all, I'd just like to apologise to Councillor Parry. I said something inappropriate at the end of that last debate through the heat of the debate, so I apologise to him personally. Sorry about that.
Carry on, Councillor.
In respect of this issue of trees, councillors, this is a no-brainer. We should be putting more money into trees. The community are calling for it. Councillor Scanlon's, she said everything basically, so I'm not going to add too much more to this. This is called for by the community. We've got this issue that we need to move forward on, and by putting more money into it, I think that's the best way to go. So I encourage you to vote for this.
Thank you. Speaker against the motion? Councillor Congerton.
Thank you, Councillor Scanlon, for all those wonderful percentages. I live in Balladura. I got more people in Balladura want to take out the trees than plant them, surprisingly. Sick to death of leaf litter and ripping up the driveways and affecting their homes, but that's not really what this is all about. I'm not sure where you want all this planting to happen. So if you were to enlighten me at some stage where you would like it to happen, it's like this broad thing. Let's spend $100,000 on putting trees where? Uniformly? Do we break up the extra 40,000 in the percentages that you're making reference to? or do we stick it all in Midland, which seems to be the coin of phrase lately? Your increase of $40,000, if we take that out by a few years, pays for almost that path that you're asking for. And if it came to being tree canopy path, I'd go the path and the tree canopy. And does the 40,000 increment to 100,000 then move to the following year at 100,000 and then 100,000, or is there a 40,000 incremental base sitting on each year as you move forward? It's just a little bit loose for me, sorry.
Thank you, Councillor. Speaker for the motion, Councillor Catalano.
Thank you. Well, it's not just about Midland, actually. People of Dayton, they want trees planted. In fact, trees haven't been planted by developers and they want trees planted. The people in Caversham have got like trees this big. Now, Beechborough, they've just lost streets and streets of bottlebrush, you know, the Kings Park bottlebrush. They've had to be pulled out. There's no trees on the streets. And people have told me they want, shady verges. They want the trees put back in their place. So there's a lot of other areas that need trees other than just Midland. So and people have requested that I speak on trees, and they've requested trees as a matter of urgency. They are baking. I mean, just go to Dayton and know what it's like to bake under the sun there. Young families. The point is that this 100,000 can be spent in lots of ways. I asked Mr. Coton how much a mature tree is, and I mean, we don't mean a fully mature tree. We mean a tree that's at the point where in a couple of years' time it starts to give some good shade, as opposed to putting in trees this big and waiting for the next 30 years for shade. He said that they'd be worth around about $100. Now, if we think that we're talking about 100,000, we're only talking 1,000 reasonable-sized trees that will actually give cover. You know what? This is not a lot of money. And actually, this is going to be critical. This is going to be critical for the future of all of our suburbs in the future. There's some suburbs that have got beautiful tree cover, but generally speaking, there's a lot of suburbs that don't. And those new suburbs there in Dayton and Caversham, those people are desperate. They're taking their children to the parks. There's no shade. I mean, we've got to have these mature trees in. We've got to provide these people with cover. It's just the least we can do, and also it's the best we can do, because ultimately people's health and well-being is going to suffer. I think that we should actually just get it in our mind that, in fact, leafy avenues and leafy boulevards are absolutely they're what people dream to live in, and that's what we should be thinking about, not baking, scorching heat islands. And it's good investment. This is investment in the future of our people, in the future of our landscapes. And it's, if we start now, in 5 years' time, we're going to have some good cover. Ultimately, this is not going to be put off forever. This is going to be a decision that's going to have to be made, because it's only going to get hotter. It's not going to get, we're not going to, it's going to get hotter. I mean, I think this summer has proved that, things really are heating up environmentally, but even if that weren't the case, just the fact that you've got these suburbs with a new development in them that is denuded of trees and cover means that we should be actually seriously at least considering this investment in our landscapes and our people. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Speaker against the motion, Councillor Henderson.
Councillors, I wonder how many of you who've been out there door knocking at election time have asked the question of the resident, what do you think of the rates you pay? That's a damn good way to get a discussion going because, man, you can't shut them up. Only $100,000. Have a think of the last 6 months. How many dollars have been proposed to go onto the draft budget? And if that all happens to get some traction, what increase we're going to have to put up to those ratepayers in this next budget? Now, frankly, you should be saying to every developer out there, why aren't you putting more trees back that you've just flattened to do your whatever, what I call scorched earth developments? And we've started to do that. We've had some discussion in the chamber along those lines about the fact that we're not seeing enough trees planted by the developers. They rip them down. They should be planting them. Why should our ratepayers have to pay extra? People that buy that land should be effectively paying for it in the block price. So I think that's the first key issue, is who should pay to have these developments greened. My block is about 6 acres. It was almost bare when I bought it. I'd have about 150 trees on that block now that my wife and I personally planted and watered for years and years to get going. And I love it. Nice and green, beautiful. I go hug a tree every now and again. I love it. I paid for it, right? Believe it or not, I am a tree hugger. The point is that we put a significant amount of money into trees and works each year. If we put them in verges as an example, and the residents can't even be bothered taking a hose out to water them, and they die, it's just a waste of our ratepayers' money. To send our people around with water trucks to water them is awful expensive. As the Mayor would know how much it costs to cart water around the place. And the fact of the matter is many of them fail and you end up with patchy response down the street. Councillors, we need to get very focused on what we spend and how we spend. I'm sorry. I think $60,000 is already a large amount of money for us to invest in this. To take that out to $100,000 a year just simply means our ratepayers are going to have to pay more money, and you're going to have to, when you knock on that door, say, well, I'm sorry, that 0.1 or 0.2% on top of all the other stuff was my fault. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Speaker for the motion, Councillor Parry.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I am voting for this just for the simple reason I agree with Councillor Catalano in reference to the new suburbs. When I've done door knocking too, Councillor Henderson, I know it's hot. You want to know why? Because I'm wearing jeans in 26 degrees and I'm building up a sweat. And that, despite walking 15, 16 Ks, when I deliver these pamphlets, it's still hot. It's still bloody hot down the urban corridor, in particular Brabham, Henley Brook as well. And despite comments, I actually do care about my children's future as well, Mr Mayor. Also, I'd like to point out to Councillor Congdon as well, one of the best things about living in the Lakes Estate is actually the entrance into trees. It's pretty simple stuff, I think. You got to start putting the trees in the ground, and actually makes a beautiful scene as well. Like when I go down Paradise Keys in particular, I love seeing the low density areas that I have in my area with trees coming in as well. I think it's magnificent. And I think we'll need to discuss it as well on Monday, but we'll bring that up to it when it comes to it. Trees are very important as well for the community aspect as well. Families like to go under shade as well. These are important issues, and by the way, as well as for Brabham and Henley Brook as well, they are supposed to be livable areas as well. By having trees for young families down the Jungle Park, down Livy's Playground, down all these recreational areas that we have to have, the schools, etc., they're important. Why? Because it's natural shade. That's why I'm voting for it as well. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Parry. Speaker against the motion. Speaker for. Councillor Lucas speaking for the motion.
Thank you, and I don't know if anyone's missed the point, but this is going on the draft budget. or further considered during the budget process. I think this is a lot more acceptable to me than the motion moved at the AGM of electors, where it was $100,000 per ward. I couldn't agree with a $500,000 increase. I'll keep my views open to a $400,000 increase from 60 to 100,000. If it's hot when you're door knocking, Councillor Parry, wear shorts, t-shirt and thongs.
Point of order,
That's
Mr.
what I
Mayor.
did.
I actually did.
Well, sorry, you said you wore jeans. And I don't want to cast aspersions, but the figure of $100 for a mature tree to provide shade in a couple of years, I don't think that's correct. If it is, we'd be putting in a lot more of those trees and would have shade in a couple of years. Last weekend I was fortunate enough to be invited to the new Mirvac park called Dazzle Park in Bennett Springs. First opening, a great event. And they had some what I'd call medium-sized trees, perhaps 10 to 15 feet in height. Not quite at the stage where they're providing shade, and they were about $1,200 to $1,500 per tree, not $100. But as I said, it's only going on the draft budget. We can discuss it later during the budget process. But I must be honest, I actually get more requests from my residents to have trees taken out in mature areas such as Beachborough, Lockridge and Kiara than I do have putting new trees in. That's the fact that I see it. But I do like trees, so I'll support the proposed motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lucas. Speaker against the motion? Speaker for? Question, Councillor Podovnik.
Just in relation to Councillor Congerton's comment about where these trees are going to go, I'm not familiar with the process. I've just obviously started council, so I think it's valid. How do we determine, does that happen after in the draft budget process, like where these trees go and some of the issues that are raised? How does this get addressed?
Pretty much. Mr. Coates would have to have a plan, operational.
With the budget that's proposed to be added on to the street tree budget, we get requests from people during the year who want a street tree, and if they're willing to undertake to water it, if it can be, if a tree can be planted on their verge, considering sight lines and power lines and crossovers and things like that, then it will be planted. So it's basically a list of where people want it planted on their verges. We have found when we actually just go and physically put them on people's verges, people don't look after them, and a lot of people don't actually want them on their verge for the reasons that were raised, like leaves, etc.
Yep, one more question. Yep.
Just one more. So in relation to maybe some of the main arteries, so if people aren't asking for verge trees, but we've got, main arteries of roads, is that something that we as a council would consider to make a decision on?
Mr. Coates?
It probably depends on the situation. There's a number of situations like that as part of landscaping projects where that work has been done. Often that's just in consultation with the ward council. If there's, good reasons for it and there's budget available, it can be done. It doesn't have to come to full council to make a decision on things like that.
Thank you. Okay, Speaker against the motion, for the motion, I think Councillor Richardson, you had your hand up.
Definitely for the motion. We come into Averley and we have a beautiful green expanse of lawn and fountains, and it continues into Ellenbrook. But I'd definitely be for suggesting that some of those trees be planted at the further back areas of around Malvern Springs, where it tends to get drier and scrubbier in the heat, which would be similar to probably Dayton or lack of shade. And I know that from door knocking, the constituents do enjoy living in the greener suburbs and having that tree coverage. As to what height and what size you put in, there are other tree planting schemes available. We've got suppliers, we've got Men in the Trees. The combination of spending that money not on all mature trees at $100 a piece, and using schools and the community to participate in those tree planting schemes as well.
Thank you, Councillor. Speaker against motion? No other speeches. Councillor Scanlon, you're right of reply. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So thank you, everybody, for your contributions to discussion. It was great to get some healthy debate happening on this and to hear different perspectives, some quite different from my own. And I'd just like to mention a couple of things with this. One thing I almost wanted to pass a note to, I keep on wanting to come, Councillor Coton, but Mr Coton, to say, what about the report that's coming to Council in April with the urban forest strategy? That is where the staff are identifying potentially where these trees will go. Staff have already told me there's parks that need replantings of trees. The staff do this. That's their job. They do it every day. The staff figure out where the trees go. We don't have to worry about it unless we want to. So this is just for an increase in the budget to allow the staff to get to work straight away on their strategy, which they're bringing to us in April. So if you don't want any trees in Balladura, you can have your say then when it comes to Council in April. The money's on the budget, and then you can say we don't want any in Balladura, and that's fine.
Councillor.
So there are many ways to reduce rates, going to some comments made by Councillor Henderson of the cost of the trees. And, we have many large projects. I don't want to go into details of all of the projects we have, but we have $1 million projects. We're talking about $40,000 to increase the health and well-being of the City of Swan into the future. This is about future-proofing the City of Swan for our community against the urban heat effect. This is really, really important to our community. So I love that Councillor Henderson's had the opportunity to plant so many trees on his property. I'd like to plant more, but I don't have as much space. A beautiful, beautiful property. But many do not have this luxury of large spaces to plant trees. Many, many, many of our residents live in units, apartments, in new estates where there are no trees. We need to create the treed spaces for them. We need to plant trees in the streets, plant trees in the parks, create places where everybody, no matter what their background, no matter what their socioeconomic status, can enjoy a cool, shady treed space. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we now put the motion? Those in favour?
Manny Schultz got me.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Motion is carried. Those against? Councillor Henderson 1. Takes us now to motion 10 and a proposed motion from Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. My motion is that Council resolve to write to the Honourable Michelle Roberts MLA, Member for Midland, a request that she consider asking the Metropolitan Redevelopment Authority to give Toohey Gardens, Midland, to the City of Swan in April 2020 on the occasion of the 125th anniversary of the founding of Midland Junction, so I guess it would have been. 2, record the reasons for changing the officer's recommendation as 1, Toohey Gardens was gifted to Midland and it would be a wonderful gesture for the state government to gift it back to Midland to resume its role as a park. 2, the Midland Activity Centre has far less than the minimum 10% public open space. 3, the City of Swan has recognised a climate change emergency. 4, tree planting can help combat climate change. 5, the City of Swan is planning to increase its tree canopy and Toohey Gardens can be part of that plan. And if I had 6, Mr Mayor, we could plant some of these leftover trees there, if they're any left over from...
Just read your motion, Councillor.
Yeah,
thank you. Seconder, Councillor Scanlon, is there any against? Question, Councillor Lucas. You've got a question.
Thank you. I don't know which staff was Mr Coton or Mr Tam, but item 2 of point 2 it states the Midland Activity Centre has far less than the minimum 10% public open space. In relation to the trees, in relation to the public open space, can you confirm the percentage given in the motion, please?
Through you, Mr Mayor, a report item was presented to Council in April 2018, and it's stated here the calculation for Midland Activity Centre has 11.9243% of unrestricted public open space.
Further question, Councillor Lucas? Hang on, well, just other councillors ahead of you, Councillor.
No, but I'd ask Councillor Johnson to amend that item 2 and I'd be happy to support his motion.
Be debating the definition of public open space, but
Yeah, I can amend that. Okay, so
how would you like to change it?
So you're going to move that to say to read it's 11 point whatever 9.2%. Okay. Right. So 2 comes out. Is that okay with the seconder? Okay. Councillor Parry.
I had a question in regards to point 3 as well. I'm just new to this. The City of Swan has recognised a climate change emergency. Is that correct, Mr. Mayor?
Actually, it is. We did not declare a climate change emergency, but it was that we would write to the federal and state government that one exists and they need to take action. So that statement is actually correct. Question, Councillor McNamara. Microphone, thanks, Councillor.
I waited for the debate to answer your to make a statement against what you just said.
Okay. I know it pretty well.
Rather than ask your questions.
Okay. Councillor Catalano, you got a question?
Actually, yes. I just wanted clarification as to whether that. I mean, I know it's been deleted, but I might as well just finish off that train of thought. The public open space in the Midland Activity Centre, that the 11%, does that comprise footpaths and hard surfaces, or does that comprise footpaths and hard surfaces?
Councillor, given it's been deleted, it's actually an irrelevant question at the moment. So
not really. I just wanted to finish off that train of thought.
Well, it
Thank you.
was finished off when Councillor Johnson withdrew it from the motion, so it's an irrelevant question now. So, right, councillors, I need a speaker against the motion. Councillor McNamara.
Mr. Mayor, I'm against this because...
Mr. Mayor, don't I get to speak for it?
You're actually right.
Sorry.
We got lost in translation.
My apologies.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Let's open the debate, shall we? I thought you might fall asleep there, Councillor, and I got you again. But carry on.
Mr. Mayor, I must admit I wasn't expecting to debate this one, so I felt it was self-explanatory. Mr. Mayor, as you know, we've tried many ways of getting Tui Gardens back, and this is yet another attempt to do it. Tui Gardens is still there. We have some actually really quite nice trees growing on Tui Gardens, and if the MRA continue to fail to sell it as they have continued to fail to sell it for over 20 years, eventually it will turn itself into a park automatically, and the hoardings will fall down, and it will just be a beautiful green space, and we won't have to pay for it. But the point is, it is still up for sale, and the MRA have failed to sell it. And I think that the MRA needs to realise that such a strange shaped block in a location such as that is an unsuitable location to try to build a triangular building. I've no idea what use it would possibly have in that location, yet it is a location that is ideally suited for a beautiful green small pocket park with plenty of trees in it. We could plant some really big trees on that site. Councillors, in addition, a lot of the elements of the park are still in place. For instance, there is a small monument in there that notes that this was the site of the original Midland train line that went up into the hills. You can still see the tracks there. So it would be a matter of taking down the hoardings and just putting in some trees and some grass. I think it would be a huge success. Councillors, Tui Gardens was gifted to the city, I don't know, years ago. I can't remember now. I think it was about 80 or 90 years ago. And the main reason was that it was a small triangular piece of land and it wasn't suitable for anything else except to be a park. There are lots of photographs around showing it as a park. Councillors, I do believe Tui Gardens is destined to be returned to as a park, and this is another way of doing it. And I'm sure that the Honourable Michelle Roberts, MLA member for Midland, would be only too happy to get a letter from us politely asking for her to consider asking the MRA to give this to us. And who knows who might get to respond to the letter. It might provide work for someone in this room. So, councillors, as this isn't going to cost anything other than a letter and some postage, I'd urge you to support this latest means of recovering Tui Gardens. Thank you, councillors.
Councillor Scanlon is the seconder.
I'd just like to support Councillor Johnson's motion, as this increases the tree canopy within Midland, and this is something that people of Midland tell me over and over again that they'd really want to see. This is Tui Gardens is an important historical park to the people of Midland. It comes up time and time again. It's within the people's hearts, and they'd like this. This is something they would like us to do. Please consider this motion. It's just to write a letter to the Honourable Michelle Roberts. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Speakers against the motion? Councillor McNamara.
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Johnson, I would certainly support this particular motion, except I believe that the new number 2, City of Swan has recognised the climate change emergency, is totally incorrect. This particular body did not support an emergency, a climate emergency. It asked the state government to recognise that there's an emergency. We did not recognise an emergency in this, and that is a fact. There is no doubt in the wider world, and that's why I disagreed with what the Mayor said, and I'm saying it in my debate. Yes, I will support it if you remove number 2, and that's it. Otherwise, I will not. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McNamara. Speaker for the motion.
Remove item 2.
Which is 3, which used to be the 2?
Correct.
Okay. Is that okay with the mover and the seconder? We're talking about semantics here.
Yeah, it's okay, Mr Mayor.
Okay, so that now removed. Okay. Okay. Speaker for the motion. Speakers against the motion. Councillors, for what it's worth, I'll make a comment. The most intelligent part about this motion is paragraph 1. That could have been done long ago, and it's about time we got Michelle Roberts to do something about it as our sitting member. On that, Councillor Johnson, you're right to reply.
Yeah, Mr Mayor, look, I'm actually, at the next meeting, I'm going to move a motion to have that particular motion of council where we did recognise the climate change emergency framed and put on the wall somewhere, so we can be absolutely clear what we've decided. Councillors, I call on you to support this motion. It makes a lot of sense.
Okay. Those in favour? It's unanimous. Carried. How long are we going to take to get rid of this one? Right, Councillor, we should be able to deal with motion 12 fairly quick because at 9:30 we'll be going to deal with the confidential item. So, Councillor, if we can make this one pretty quick. Councillor Johnson.
Okay, we'll do. Mr Mayor, my proposed motion is the Council resolve to request the CEO to prepare a report into how the subdivision application for 12 Astroloma Place, Cungamai, was approved when previous similar development applications were rejected by the Council on 15th of March 2017. Record the reason for changing the officer's recommendation is that the Cungamai community have requested this report as they would like to know why their park has been sold for high-density development, and B, would like to know how a high-density development application that was apparently rejected by the Council in March 2017 has been approved as a subdivision application submitted to the Western Australian Planning Commission on delegated authority. Thank you.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Scanlon. Is anyone against? Councillor Lucas. Wish to debate it? I assume. Councillor Johnson, if you'd like to open the debate.
Mr Mayor, the reason this has been brought to Council, of course, was because it came up at the annual meeting of electors, and the reason it's come up at the annual meeting of electors is there is a quite big change going on in Cungamai right now. So the demographic of Cungamai is changing. People are much more assertive. They're asking questions. They're proud of their suburb, and they saw this piece of land, 12 Astroloma Places, being a park. And unfortunately, just to tell you what happened recently, councillors, it was bulldozed about 4 weeks ago. It was kind of sad. It was a beautiful piece of bushland with beautiful trees and I can't remember, grass trees, I think we'll call them. Absolutely marvellous. Everybody loved the area. They all recognised it was potentially under threat. But it was bulldozed. It was subdivided. Councillors, it came to this council. I think we rejected the application, and then somehow it got subdivided. The people in the community don't understand what happened. I do. I was there all the way through it, but I think a report needs to be produced so that people in Cungamai can understand what has happened to their park. I think we're seeing a community waking up here. They've requested this report. And I think we owe it to them to explain what's happening. I think it's a good channel of communication. I can see they're not going to get their park back, unfortunately, no matter how much we'd all like to give it back to them because it has been sold. But I think if there's an explanation as to what's happened and where did the money go, and I think that's one of the questions that are happening now. I know, councillors, that the money is in the Congamaya Public Open Space Reserve. So I think it's about, right or wrong, about $1.2 million. I think it would set the community's mind at rest if they knew that's what had happened. So that's one of the things I see in this report. So, councillors, it's coming up to 9:30. I think I'll rest it there. Please support this report. Thank you.
Councillor Scanlon, a seconder.
Just quickly, I'm supporting this because we're about becoming an open, more transparent local government, as all local governments are across Western Australia. And this is something the community have asked for, and it's a response to the community, an engaged community, and I want them to have a positive response from the city. Thank you.
Speaker against the motion? Speaker for the motion? Anyone against?
Well, I said I didn't want to debate.
Don't want to debate it?
So I don't know who else.
Okay. Well, if there's no debate, there's no right to reply, put the motion. Those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Those against? So 9, 4 and 5 against. Motion's carried. Okay, being 9 o'clock, councillors, I just need a motion to go behind closed doors. Moved Councillor Congdon, seconded Councillor Parry. No against. Okay, we're now behind closed doors. Turn off the transmission, please.
To return the following previously approved projects to the City's advocacy priority list. Number 1, the construction of a pedestrian underpass under the Great Eastern Highway, Helena River Bridge and connecting pathways on the south bank of the Helena River. 2, continue advocacy for priority funding for a new Swan Valley Visitor Centre to the value of $6 million, utilising plans that have previously been prepared. 2, include the construction of an all-abilities playground in Ballajura on the City's advocacy priority list. 3, record the reasons for changing the officer's recommendations are: 1, the construction of a pedestrian underpass has previously been identified by Council as a key priority in June 2019 and continues to be a top priority of Council for funding from the State Government. 2, the Swan Valley tourism industry and the City of Swan economy and ratepayers would benefit from a visitor centre located in the Swan Valley. 3, the construction of an all-abilities playground has been previously identified by the Ballajura community as a key priority and is a top priority of Council for funding from the State or Federal Government.
Right. With regard, who did you communicate with regard to this particular motion from Ballajura?
Councillor Parry and Councillor Parry, yes.
And was the rest of the councillors not involved? Were they not important? Thank you.
Yes, Mr Mayor, we need to include the original staff recommendation as well as that provided by Councillors Johnson and Henderson so that there's the full approval of all the advocacy priorities and the planned trips to Canberra.
Good point.
Can I move, Mayor, that be taken as given in this approval?
We've added it to the alternate.
I'll move that be accepted as the substantive motion.
Yeah, that's fine, Mr Mayor. That's excellent. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, this one seems quite straightforward to me. we've already approved the construction of the pedestrian underpass being added to the advocacy priority list. That was done back in 2019. Councillors, we've already passed a motion tonight to put $300,000 onto the draft budget, and this pedestrian underpass is actually part of the same path. So it's an attempt to actually properly connect South Guildford to Guildford with a decent quality, safe path, so that children can move freely from South Guildford. Children, everybody else, can move freely and safely from South Guildford to Guildford without having to cross the road and without being endangered by the road. So how it slipped off, I don't know, but anyway, it needs to go. I do believe it needs to go back on until such a time as the underpass is funded and there is a date set for it. We need to continue to advocate for it. I think, councillors, I will probably leave it to Councillor Henderson to talk later about the Swan Valley Visitor Centre. So I'll rest there, and I'm sure Councillor Parry can talk about item 2.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the time. I wish to note that we have discussed this playground, or an all abilities playground, in our wish list already. I know it's been involved with all 3 local councils as well, dated the 15th of January. Well, I must apologise, but that was the case, and that was dated then. But also, the fact that this is such an important thing for the Balladura community is it's actually been brought up in our local area plan as well. It's one of the number 1 priorities. In fact, in my election in our election campaign, it was well liked by our community. And also, I'd like to note as well, the state government has funded parks in the Whiteman ward as well, in Pearce Place and Whiteman. Why can't they do the same for the Balladura community? It's a pretty simple request, and I think it should be at least asked to state or federal government. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Speaker against the motion, Councillor McNamara.
I'm just against the motion so as I can debate it. Number 1, to be on the advocacy list, one must have a plan. One must know what and where and how much it's going to cost, how much they're going to spend, and where it's going to be. I have never been involved, except from a big picture point of view, that the Balladura community needed. I was one of the first, with Councillor Haynes, to actually advocate for this issue. New councillors have not, they've jumped into the issue now, like I call it, bandwagon situation. But it's a needed setup. But we're looking at a situation that good manners, from the point of view of communicating with your fellow councillors, like we had, for instance, with the debate we had from the point of view of our Beachborough or Altone situation. Communication is a very, very important situation. Councillors must know what's happening in their area. From the point of view of the advocacy, we have to have a plan, we have to have a budget, and we have to have an area that we're going to place this particular situation in. Otherwise, it doesn't happen. We're wasting our time asking ministers for money. What do you want it for? Oh, well, we might put a $200,000 or $400,000 playground over there, or maybe it might be over there. We don't know. We haven't actually sat down and made a decision on the actual budget for this. And until we do, we don't have an advocacy plan. We cannot go looking for money if we haven't got a plan to spend it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Speaker for the motion, Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Mayor. Just quickly, I did have a quick discussion with the CEO at our previous briefing, I think it was, at the Agenda Forum, about the Swan Valley plan, and that motion that we dealt with, he pulled it up and sent it to me, and it confirms that we would continue advocacy to fund the new visitor centre, and there was another part to include a Aboriginal cultural interpretive space as part of it. So the purpose of the idea was to continue the advocacy and see if money pops out the end.
Speaker against the motion, Councillor Colley.
Thank you, Mayor. I rise to speak against this motion. I've got no issue, councillors, with the Ballajura All Abilities Playground or the pedestrian underpass, but I do have a problem with what Councillor Henderson said with respect to the decision made in the previous motion. It was to retain the Swan Valley Visitor Centre in its current location in Guildford. That was the motion itself, and it was to continue its advocacy for priority funding for a new visitor centre. Now, sorry? But the point is, this motion is about the new visitor centre in the Swan Valley. Now, it's currently in Guildford. My preference would be that we retain this award-winning visitor centre, because let's face it, we've won a lot of awards. It's been very exceptionally popular. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. We don't need to spend or advocate on behalf of the ratepayer for another $6 million when we could possibly be spending it elsewhere. The question is, would a new visitor centre cost us $6 million anyway? It's probably going to be more like 12, so we've got a funding shortfall already. We've decided at a previous council meeting to retain the visitor centre in Guildford. I think we should just keep it at that. I don't mind that we look for a new visitor centre, but that's not what was approved previously. Having this on
point
the...
of order, Mr Mayor, if I may.
Okay. What's your point of order?
I just want to be clear that what's being represented isn't what the previous motion was. The previous motion says continue with operations and management of the Swan Valley Visitor Centre, and then it went on to deal with the other matters. So it didn't say to retain, it said to continue, and then it was to deal with the other matters. Thank you.
Correct, Councillor Henderson, but the point 2, which follows immediately after, was to retain the Swan Valley Visitor Centre in its current location in Guildford. And point 4 was to continue advocacy, and I'll grant you that, for priority funding for a new visitor centre. But this motion is about locating it in the Swan Valley, and Guildford's not considered Swan Valley, so we could potentially be putting a new visitor centre in Guildford. So I can't vote for this because it's just inconsistent with what we'd agreed previously, and I'm not sure whether advocating for a facility of $6 million what we'd end up with, when we should be possibly looking at, to do it really well, to do it exceptionally well, we possibly need to be looking around the $15 million mark. Otherwise, we end up with a lean-to shed or the like, another tin shed, as Councillor Catalano likes to put it, in the Swan Valley at $6 million, because you know how these architects and builders seem to work when it comes to council tenders. So I can't
Again,
support this
point of
motion.
order, misleading information.
Yeah, I think we keep it on track. Councillor Johnson, would you like to rejoin us, please? Okay. Speaker for the motion, Councillor Scanlon.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to say that this underpass bridge under the Helena River Bridge is something the community have been asking for a long time, and it's really, really important, because as it is, they can't cross Great Eastern Highway safely. So we've had two items come up on this in safety in South Guildford tonight, and this is a really, really important issue. We can't lose this item off the advocacy list. It's to return it to the priority list. It was already on there. So I'd really like to urge you to support this motion. Should this motion fail, I foreshadow an alternate motion with 1, return the following previously approved projects to the city's advocacy priority list, and 2, include the construction of All Abilities Playground in Ballajura on the city's advocacy priority list. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker against the motion. Question, Councillor McNamara.
I've already spoken about the question. With regard to the advocacy, can I get some information with regard to the logistics from the point of view of the time it goes on an advocacy list? What happens from the time that those people, like yourself and the CEO and the Deputy Mayor, meet those people who want to draw money from? What actually happens? The logistics of putting it on here, what actually happens from the point of view of how we approach those people with the dollars?
Well, first and foremost, we'll prioritise them from the bigger projects down and the most important ones. And then it's a matter of being target specific on those ministers and parliamentarian members that can actually give us leverage in gaining some of that funding. That makes sense. So there will be some state funding, state priorities, and then there's the federal projects. And generally you'll find the bigger ones are federal projects. Perhaps Mr Newman would like just to clarify that. You're heavily involved there.
Yeah, look, the advocacy priority lists really focus on about 15 priorities that we really press hard for in the political sphere. The ones that are in front of you today are really, as we head towards the 2021 state election, they're focused towards state achievable priorities for the state election. And what we generally do, once these are approved by council, I work with the city staff and we generate a proposal and put together a nice looking plan and a booklet and some flashy graphics and really sell the project to the MPs. Try and source that as much income as we can or as much funding as we can for the city and progress those.
Thank you, Mr Newman. Does that clarify your question, Councillor?
It starts to clarify, Mr Mayor. Do you mind if I have a supplementary question? With regard to the actual plan that was just mentioned, is the plan the actual financial plan, or is it the plan to build, or is it the plan location? So is the whole plan given to the people that we're chasing the money from?
Close to, it'll be more of a concept draft overview, depending on the project, because they're very broad. We're talking major road infrastructure to footpath to a playground, so they're historically, traditionally different. So you would have a concept drawing for the playground versus something more specific for a road. So it's varied, to be quite honest, Councillor. Councillor Congleton, a question.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. On the same line, if on the advocacy program the playground is put on there, the indicative cost could come from our offices. The location is basically irrelevant because it would be city-owned land. We wouldn't put it on private land. So it would be an indicative cost of the playground, and that's the type of costing you would be chasing.
Yes.
So in the concept that was mentioned just a moment ago, Daniel, the diagrams, the concept, the approximate cost of the things you'll be going away to advocate for, yeah?
And bear in mind, we may not get the whole lot. They'll say,
sure, I understand. But
I'll
I
kick
just
$1 million
wanted
into
clarified, yeah?
Yeah,
Okay,
they'll kick $1
thank
million
you.
into a $2 million project.
Yeah, thank
so
you, thank you.
You're left
Thank
to
you.
find the balance. So, okay. Any further speakers? No further speakers. Those in favour? Oh, sorry, Councillor, you're right to reply. If we really need it.
Right,
given the
reply,
hour,
Mr Mayor.
Do we really need it? It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, just 30 seconds. Mr Mayor, councillors, items 1.1 and 1.2 are really just a technicality. They're putting something back on the list. It should have always have been there. How it fell off, I've got no idea. Maybe they just fell off the back of a lorry. Item 2 is a perfectly reasonable thing that Councillor Parry contacted me about today. Look, we can advocate now and plan later. There's no reason why we can't go to Canberra with this list. We need to do this now, and all these three things are important. Number one is important for 1.1 is important for safety reasons. I understand the Mayor and the CEO and some of the staff are heading off to Canberra before the next meeting, so we need to make this decision now, and I urge councillors to support this. It's important.
Thank you, councillors. Those in favour? Those in favour is 12. Against is 2. Well, motion is carried. Okay, we're not likely to get another one done, I don't think.
Motion 15.
We might get out of it. Okay, Councillor, we've probably got time for one more, and we're talking to motion 15 and Councillor Scanlon.
Thank you, and I'll be super quick because this is just a deferral item. So my motion, or my alternate motion for motion 15, is that Council resolve to defer consideration of this motion until the proposed local planning policy, POL LP 12, advertised signage is considered by Council in early 2020. The reason for this motion is to ensure that feedback received in relation to the City's signage policy from the annual meeting of electors held in December 2019 is considered when recommendations are presented to Council on this planning policy.
Seconded, Councillor Kiley. Is anyone against? Do you wish to debate it, Councillor Henderson? You don't wish to debate it? Thank you very much for that. Councillors, we'll put that to vote. Those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Those against? Councillor McNamara? 4 against. 2 in favour. Okay, so in that case it's 11 to 3. It's carried. Councillor, note we've still got quite a few items left to go.
Mayor, can I move that we consider the confidential item 3.1 because it's people wanting an outcome?
Well, I don't think it's that urgent, is it? That it can't wait till Tuesday? No, it's not that Tuesday. The next available time, councillors, is Tuesday afternoon, Tuesday evening. So it's only a couple of days prior to. So I think we don't need to consider it now. Thank you, councillors. Move a motion for adjournment till Tuesday. Move Councillor Zanino. Seconded Councillor Parry. On against? Tuesday. It's carried.